Hello, everyone. Thank you for clicking in. This is going to be, I know, a very fun show because we're talking about a favorite topic for anybody who's a monster kid and grew up in the 50s, the 60s, early 70s, and it's favorite monster movies of the 1950s. Now, I'm Joe Mayo, and my channel is Mayo's Movies for the moment. I keep changing the title. And I'm here with my friend Richie V. Hey, Richie.
Hey, Joe, good to be here
Thanks for coming
discussing on
on.
a subject near and dear to my heart.
You can see by his background setup there, he also loves
Mhm.
this stuff. And well, what can I say? I'll just start telling you all how I got into it. Basically, I was a late bloomer because I always say that the monster boom started maybe in 1957 with or so with the Shock Theater, and then it was really the biggest in the 50s and 60s. The 60s, early 60s was huge. Mid 60s. I got came into it. I best I could decipher from my memories was around probably around 68 or 69, 1968 or 9, and into the early 70s. And I grew up in the New York area with shows like Creature Features on Channel 5 and Chiller Theater, but a later form of Chiller Theater. Mine was the one with the hand, the quicksand. And I thought that I would ask Richie about his memories because mine are just everywhere I went. There were monster movies, horror movies, monster films, day and night. It seemed on all the channels. So we only had like three main. 5 plus 5, 9, 11 had most of them, I think. 11, yeah, and that's my memory. I think we're in the same area, Richie. How about you?
Well, I think so. Yeah, I think I have a couple of years on you.
Oh,
So,
you do.
yeah, my monster. I think I'm about 35 years older than you are. My monster memories on TV, same like you. They were more like TV shows than movies when I was a kid because that's how prevalent they were. Uh, I would say, yeah, the creature features on Channel 5, the local stations is where I got most of my monster movies. Creature features were Channel 5, Supernatural Theater was Channel 9, and of course Chiller, on Channel 11. And I remember Chiller when it had the years before the Six Fingered Hand opening. They had the this montage of movies that used to terrify me just watching that montage. And it's funny now because they're mostly movies that people think of as very campy and very silly, but they were
Yeah.
terrifying to my 7-year-old self. And I think that whole world that they call the monster kids world, which you're right, it started in the 50s with the Shock Theater, which was primarily 30s and 40s movies. That then when they were desperate for television programming, they would just throw anything on, and those were all most people's introduction to those movies, unless you were old enough to have seen them in a theater. But by the time I started watching them in the early 60s, then the 50s movies were thrown in with the 30s movies and the 40s movies. And even you'd get some early 60s movies that, lasted about a week in the theater and then were immediately thrown onto TV. And by that time, it was the big Monster Kids boom. We had magazines, Famous Monsters and Castle of
Mhm.
Frankenstein. We had bubblegum cards, the infamous Aurora models, toys, everything you can imagine. And that's so I was right in the middle of that, and that was my life when I was a kid. I wasn't into sports. That was my sport.
Me either.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because I remember thinking for the longest time, oh, how I wish there'd be a horror host again coming out with this stuff today that people could get into it. And because we used to have horror hosts, there was Zachary, although Zachary was before my time. Do you remember Zachary?
I do remember Zachary, but funny, when I was first introduced to Zachary, he was hosting, Hercules cartoons on Channel 11 on WPIX. So it was just after his monster hosting, bit, which they brought him back in, like, the late '70s and the '80s to kinda reprise that, and then he was also a DJ on WPLJ. An FM DJ in the later '60s. So when I first came across Zachary, he wasn't Monster Zachary, although he did have that persona and the voice and that look, but he was doing cartoon shows.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, basically, every horror movies were everywhere, and they were like TV shows in the same way that the Bowery Boys were TV shows, and Abbott and Costello movies were TV shows, and the Little Rascals were a TV show to us.
Mhm. Yeah, because I saw a guy, the only guy I remember growing up with was a poor substitute for a horror host. It was the Creep. They had this guy, the Creep, that was on.
I know him.
That was from like 71 or two. That's really near the end of this Monster Kid period. He was on Creature Features for a little while. He had dark shades on. I think his name was Lou Steele. Called himself the Creep.
Now he sounds familiar. Yeah,
He
I
was
have
the
one of those
voice.
McFarlane books about like the history of horror movie hosts, and I think I'm pretty sure he knows.
Yeah, and he was never very good. No offense, but it was something. But nowadays we have Svengoolie, is why we're bringing all this up. My dreams kind of come true. You can watch Svengoolie on MeTV,
I love
and
Svengoolie.
he shows all this stuff, 50s, 40s, 30s, and other stuff too.
In the
Hammer
80s,
films.
they also had Morgus. Do you remember Morgus?
No, my name, I think. I don't remember him
It
personally.
was
No.
syndicated. I think he was out of the Midwest somewhere. I'm not sure where, but they were carrying him in New York for a while on Channel 5, Saturday
So,
afternoon.
well, I'm trying to decide what we're going to do here. Basically, we thought we have like 20 films each, maybe 15, 20 films that are monster movies from the 50s. And there were a whole bunch of categories we could do in the future. But for now, today is going to be monster movies of the 50s. And we thought that we would just, for one thing, because I had wondered, leave the Hammer films, which I love Hammer films, but we're going to leave the Hammer films out of this because maybe later on we'll do a dedicated Hammer movies video. So for now, it's non-Hammer. So if anybody says, "Oh, gee, where's the Mummy from Hammer, or where's Horror of Dracula?" Now you know why they're
The
not
Mummy's
there.
too slow. We're still waiting for him to show up.
Yeah, that's well, Robo Mummy from the as I call him from the Hammer one, a little faster.
He was a little quicker on his feet.
you know. So, all right. Well, we figured we're going to go through these now. We'll take one each. We have no idea what the other person's going to show. Our name. We haven't talked about it. It's going to be a surprise for both of us. I'm sure we're going to have similarities, but for some reason, I'm
Let's
thinking
see.
we're going to be quite different too. I'm guessing. So I'm going to start with Richie. I think these are in no particular order, right? These are just our favorite, except maybe at the end we'll save our ultra favorite for number one. However you want to do it.
Okay. Well, my
So let's
number one is not only my favorite monster movie. I think it's my favorite movie of all
well
time.
stop. Let's
So,
go backwards. Save it for the end. Oh, okay. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I'm
So
not saying it now. No
I
way.
was afraid you were going to
I
show it. I'm
wasn't
like,
jumping the
no.
gun.
Let's save that for last. But just start with so we're doing. Well, I'm going to say 20ish. Is that you're okay with that?
Well, I have 15, but I can pull another 5 off the top of my head, no problem. So don't
All right.
20 is fine with
We'll
me.
we'll we'll do. We'll start with you have them written down and stuff, or next to you.
Well, I have them written down, but I also have where they are in fact available on DVD or Blu-ray. I have that here to show.
Okay, let's go.
Some of
What
them
would
are
you have
not
for
in
just
print.
say? We'll start with like a 15. Let's start with 15. Let's do the 15th one. What you have, no particular order
Well,
to
again,
start.
I don't even have it as 15 there, except for that one that I told you about. There, this is completely random, and the
It's
first one
random.
I would talk about is one of my favorites of all time and one of the most important of those movies in my life. So, am I up first?
Yeah,
All right, here we go. The Monster of Piedras Blancas, and I don't think you're too surprised that I chose this.
not surprised at all.
This is a major movie to me. Probably one of the greatest films ever made, in my opinion. This is on who put this out? I don't know who put it out. Shout Factory, I guess, but it's really a beautiful Blu-ray. If you want to see how beautiful a black and white low budget movie can look, check this one out.
I have it on mine too, so we're gonna do a dual thing. This is one of
Okay,
my
cool.
picks
Yeah,
as well.
I'll do
Go
the
ahead,
same.
Rich.
But for me, the reason this movie is so important is as we were talking about, when I was a kid watching Chiller Theater, Supernatural Theater, all those shows, I loved it. I was obsessed with it. But I tended to be, and I'm talking about when I'm really young, like 5, 6, I was really scared as well. I like to be scared. And the one night and I used to have to fight with brothers and sisters to watch, the Chiller Theater instead of Patty Duke or whatever else they wanted to watch. And the one night everybody was going out, I was going to be pretty much alone. And I said, okay, great. I can watch Chill at Theater. I'm not going to have any hassle. And I put it on, and that montage, the infamous montage started. And I was already just sitting there, kind of terrified and not knowing what was going to come up. And in those days, there was no remote control. you had to get up and walk over to the TV and actually change it,
Yeah.
and I'm sitting there thinking, like, should I? Am I really going to do this? Anyway, the movie that night was The Monster of Piedras Blancos, which is an incredibly creepy movie. It traumatized me out of my mind, so much so that when the commercials would come on, I was like tempted to go run over and change the channel because I didn't know if I could take more. And it just really stuck with me. And then it's not one of those popular movies that I would watch all the time. Certain movies were on all the time and everybody watched them. This wasn't a really popular one back then. And I kind of forgot about it. And then when I started like buying books and revisiting a lot of this stuff in the 70s and when home video first started with VHS, I started tracking down all these important movies from my youth. And I finally found this one. I didn't even know the name of it at that time. I had totally forgotten it. And then I watched it again after like 20, 25 years. And I totally saw why it freaked me out as a kid, because it's different than a lot of those other movies. It's very, very creepy. It's almost surreal. And it's
Surreal.
almost like a gateway movie for me for things like Night of the Living Dead or even Eraserhead, because there's no explanation for the monster, which you always get in all of these movies. There's always some ridiculous scientific reason, or they were hatched out of because of a nuclear explosion somewhere. This thing just existed, and his only purpose was to brutally rip your head off. That's what he
You're
did.
right.
All he did. And you didn't have a bunch of teenagers like you'd have in some of the later movies. There was one couple, one boy, one girl. You didn't have a scientist. You had the local general practitioner who acted as a scientist. It was just one old guy. You didn't have the army. You had one cop who also was about 64 years old. And that's it. And
It's a small, like a
everyone
beach
else in
town.
town was getting their head ripped off every other day. The
Yeah.
local, the local grocery store guy, Kolchak, who was like the neighborhood, the town gossip, who was constantly like, "Oh, the monster of Piedras Blancos, that's what's killing all these people."
Yeah.
And he had this little store, and his butcher freezer in the back doubled as the morgue in this town, which I thought was pretty
Right.
bizarre. Anyway, it was just such a strange movie. And I realized as I watched it again, I go, that's why it creeped me out, because all of the things that when you're a kid and you're kind of scared that you latch onto, this movie had none of that. And it also had an infamous scene, which I think for 7, 8-year-old kids, it was like our version of the shower psycho scene.
Yeah.
I think you know the scene I'm
It's the
talking
first time. Well, it's the first time I ever saw. If we're talking about the same thing, a severed head. And
about.
I've never seen anything. That's the first time I ever remember seeing that, where the monster walks by, and it's a great shot of him
Yeah,
carrying
yeah, the camera
somebody's head.
zooms in and he's actually swinging it like a bowling ball.
Yeah, and it looks
It's
good.
pretty
The
shocking.
effect is good too.
Yeah.
It's
And
pretty
it's a
creepy.
very, very strange, weird little movie. And again, I love the fact it almost plays like a nightmare. And I love nightmare movies that really don't have any explanation, because it's just that's what's happening and that's what you got to deal with.
And you got that one local, the lighthouse keeper, fisherman type guy that's
Yeah,
feeding the monster. He keeps feeding him.
out of loneliness. Well, you know what's
Yes.
great about that? There's a scene in that movie where I don't know if the monster did it to him or if he fell while he was down on the beach, but his daughter comes across and she's standing up on this cliff and she sees him down there. Like, she doesn't know if he's dead or if he's passed out or whatever. So she runs into town for help. And she's telling the doctor, what happened, and her boyfriend. And the first thing the doctor does is he gives her pills to calm her down,
Mm.
as if seeing your father at the bottom of a cliff isn't a reason to get upset and to be a little angry, to
Yeah.
be in a bit of a rush.
There's lots of little funny bits like that to make it, unintentionally funny bits in these movies. I know there's a part in there, the young kid who goes into the store, the local store, and finds the dead body without any head. He runs to
And
tell the police,
he's like handicapped, so he's like limping, which was a real nightmare.
and,
Like, how can he get away
he's
from
like
the
really
monster
trying
when
to
he's
run with this
that
limp, and
way?
it's crazy. But
That's
yeah.
that's actually the director's son.
Oh,
There's
really?
directed by Irvin Berwick, and I forgot his son's name, but he actually went on to do like low budget horror movies in the 80s when he grew up.
And Jean Carmen, right? Is that her name? Jean Carmen is the
Jean
woman.
Carmen, that she was a Frank Sinatra girlfriend, a famous like sexy golfer, and I guess she was in a lot of pinup. She was a real pinup queen.
All right. Well, that
50s.
covers that one. That's
That
a
covers
favorite from.
Monster of Piedras Blancos. I urge everyone to see it.
Yeah. I urge everyone to see all these movies.
All of them.
Well, at your own peril. But my first one here, I'm going to pick is, I guess I was going to go with this because I have the shirt. It's I was a teenage Frankenstein, and I don't have a copy of. I have a boot copy, not an official copy. And I'll get into that first. I was a teenage Frankenstein, 1957, where Gary Conway plays the monster,
Right.
and that's from Land of the Giants, among other things.
You did get to
Let's
see a lot of, these movies are full of actors that you would see later in '60s TV shows.
Yes,
I would
yes,
say you're lucky if you find one that doesn't have at least 1 or 2 people that would pop up later.
and I'll bet you they were all on Perry Mason at some time. As
Everybody
for
well, I think you and I were probably on Perry Mason too for that.
Perry Mason, but the reason I don't have it, I'm itching to get this. I'll just get this out of the way right away. Susan Hart, who is the wife of the deceased
Jim Nicholson,
Nicholson, right? Of Arkoff and
AIP. Yes,
AIP.
Sam Rockoff and Jim Nicholson.
She doesn't want to release this stuff. I don't want to go on too much of a tirade about this. She owns some of these movies and has never wanted to put them out, never give the rights to anybody or cash in. She's hoarding them for whatever her reason is, and a lot of fans wish that that wasn't the case. But I was a teenage Frankenstein is one of them that she has. I was a teenage werewolf is another one. I think the Amazing Colossal Man is a third. It Conquered the World is number fourth. I think Invasion of the Saucermen. I think these are all films that Susan Hart has. Let's hope she comes around. But
I couldn't agree with you more, and it AIP is one of my favorite, film companies, and again, for the '50s and '60s, it's unbelievable the great the amount of great stuff they have, and I think she's outliving the point where the audience is, even gonna be there for these films because
yeah,
it's
the
it's
longer you
like us,
wait,
if you wait until
you
we're
know,
dead before she releases them, pretty soon, no one's gonna care, uh,
yeah, that's been the
and
case for quite a while.
mm,
So I don't know what you're waiting for. Either if it's not for financial holdout, then it's just that nobody else can get them. I don't know what it is.
yeah, no, I agree with you completely on that one. That's
But I was a teenage Frankenstein. It was on videotape, but it's a cut version. Sometimes you get the cut version. I think it's a UK print. There's a part missing in there where you see a head in a bird cage.
mhm.
The it's about the movie's about a doctor played by Whit Bissell, who's another descendant of Doctor Frankenstein, and it's hilarious because he speaks just I think one person he just has a regular everyday Iowa accent from Iowa. He doesn't sound like the infamous doctor,
Yeah,
and he's just
he's
looking
not
to
very Frankensteiny.
not very Frankensteiny, whatever that is, right? And he just wants to create another living being. And when there's a teenager in a car wreck, he has his opportunity. And there's a scene in there where he's getting a new face for the person because the face kind of looks all messed up like this. And chops off a guy's head and puts it in a bird cage and walks around with a bird cage. And that's missing from, like I said, the print that is around on videotape. But what I like about it, you catch these things at a young age, as you say, and the monster looks pretty damn creepy and pretty
Yeah,
unsettling.
'cause he's
The
like a
face is
muscle man body with this horrible disfigured
Yeah,
face coming
the
onto
body's normal, a little muscle man in a t-shirt, but the head is horrible, and an eye bulging out of the socket. And in some scenes, the mouth actually moves like a little bit. A couple of scenes, which I think is pretty weird. Um, but it's a very low budget, very indoorsy feeling. And a lot of these movies, I like the fact that it seems like it could be happening in your own house. It could be like in your own cellar. S- no big
yeah, well, all of
laboratories.
these scientists have, like, basically little suburban houses, and they basically all they have is a basement.
Yeah, that's what I like. I like the suburban feel of it,
Yeah,
and I think it's not a great or exceptional movie. Not very good, but yeah, it
yeah.
just touches that fuzzy, warm feeling.
It also has, Phyllis Coates in it, who I love,
Yeah, Phyllis
who was the good
Coates,
Lois in the Superman.
Lois Lane. I
I
got
much
those phone
prefer
going
her
off.
to the, to Noel Neal or
Yeah, I
whatever.
do too. The Adventures of Superman.
She's a much tougher, hard-boiled Lois, and she's the same in this, you know? He actually has to kill her at one point because she's just too,
Oh, that's a great scene.
yeah.
Even though That's his fiance, folks. But sometimes when you know too
Sometimes you
much, you got to
gotta
shut him
tell your
up.
fiance when you're a, mad scientist.
And it's got a lot of cheesy dialogue in there. One of them is that famous line. He tells the creation, "Speak. You've got a civil tongue in your head. I know because I sewed it there myself." Something like that. So that's my pick. The next one. What do you got next, Rich?
All right, what do I got next? Next up is Fiend Without a
I
Face.
knew. I knew it. I knew you'd have
Did you
that in there.
know?
Yeah. It
This is
just
actually
missed mine, just by a hair.
this is on Criterion, so shows you the level of quality we're talking about here. I'll get a good shot of it. And it's only on DVD though. They didn't upgrade this to Blu-ray. Now, Fiend Without a Face is a pretty interesting movie. I think it's a great movie. I think it's a real minor masterpiece. The first like 2/3 of the movie is just a real creepy, almost like a mystery, and when I was a kid, and I don't know if you agree with me on this, Joe, but the thing that we dreaded the most in these movies was the invisible monster. Meaning, when I say dreaded, means that was usually the sign that the movie was going to suck. That
Oh,
they didn't have a
in that
monster.
regard.
There's a lot of examples. I mean, obviously, Invisible Invaders, which pretty much told you that.
Yeah, it's not on
But
my
even
list.
Forbidden Planet, you have these big build up to these monsters, and then the monsters are invisible through the whole movie, and you never get to see them. So for me, I would have preferred the cheap, cheesy, goofy looking, ridiculous monsters to no monster at all. Now, this movie, as a kid, when I was a kid, it played in the beginning, like I said, the first 2/3 kind of played like, oh boy, we're not going to, there's no monster. It's just people talking about the monster. And of course, as an adult, the first 2/3 of the movie now play great. And I think that it's really creepy and really, really
But you
smart.
have to really wait to the end for me to the real payoff.
I don't think there's ever been a better payoff, though. I mean, you could actually despise this movie right up to that point, and they really knew how to spend whatever little money they had. They spent it right because these special effects, these monsters, have to be among the best of the '50s. How can we describe them? They're like when they finally
Floating, flying brains,
it's like a brain with a spinal cord
spinal cord,
and
tail.
like crab legs and antennas coming out, and
Yeah.
they really it's like stop motion animation. They run around, they jump, they fly, they wrap their spinal cord tail around your neck and choke you. I mean, they're really brutal little things. And then when there's a little battle between the army, I mean, they're shooting these things and blood and guts are flying everywhere.
Have gushing blood.
It's pretty phenomenal.
And they have that kind of like messy sound, that kind of
Yeah,
gurgling sound
gurgling,
as
and
the
then
blood's
they kinda,
oozing
like,
out.
as they kinda just kind of spill out all over the rugs.
Yeah, I love. I mean, I have great memories of seeing that. I didn't. It just narrowly missed my list, but I have such great memories of seeing that. Of course, what I remember the best is the end when these things that were invisible become visible, because then nobody knows why people right are starting to break into these,
Yeah.
choke.
It
So they
it
choke.
really kinda pays off, this movie. It doesn't cheat you at all. It gives you what
Yeah.
you've been rooting for in a big way. And then you have the nice little romance between, Marshall Thompson and Kim Parker. She's pretty cute. And again,
Oh.
Marshall Thompson went on to be most kids watching that movie knew him from, Daktari was his TV show.
All right.
All right.
Next up for me. Now I know at some point, and I don't know why I think Richie's going to have this somewhere in his list, but classic monster that I am going to show you. However, this is sacrilege. Nobody but me likes. There's a trilogy to this series, and maybe people know where I'm going with this. Nobody but me that I know of likes the third film, let alone likes it best of the trilogy. And I'm talking about it's in the Creature from the Black Lagoon series, but it's not Creature from the Black Lagoon. It's The Creature Walks Among Us, which is the third
Love it.
film
It's
in
great.
this series. And the reason that I like it, I was almost going to show, I have a little figure back there, but I didn't take it off the shelf. The reason I like it, well, I saw it on TV all the time. It seems to me that The Creature Walks Among Us, film number three in the series, was always on in the afternoon a lot. But the idea behind this is that after they try to use different ideas, the first one in the first film, obviously, they try to capture the creature in the Amazon. The second film, they finally capture the creature, bring the creature back to civilization in
Well,
one
it
of
was written in
those
Florida.
Florida
You can consider that civilization.
civilization,
It's close.
uh, and it's like one of those SeaWorld attractions. He's like a attraction there. That's a great. And he escapes in the second one, but we're talking about the third one. And what I like about this one, where do you go after the first two? Well, you capture the creature again in a scene that's one of the best when they go out on a little rowboat to catch this monster, and it attacks the boat and jumps on the boat, and they have to throw fire at it and set it on fire and all this. But after that, they try to humanize the creature, take him back to their lab, and wind up cutting his gills off and find out that he has lungs and all this, and he's actually a land dwelling creature now. And somehow he grows like I don't know how much, puffs up, huge bulking like a Mike Tyson or something. He's like
He
Mike
gets like a
Tyson.
wrestler, yeah.
He's a wrestler creature, and he wears this really corny pajama outfit. Looks like he's wearing pajamas, a shirt and pants, and he's going around in like a typical hulking monster. And I'm a sucker for that as a kid, especially when you have like a Frankensteinian automaton type monster walking around, especially the creature now
And the
having
creature is a
grown.
monster you never thought you'd see in an outfit of any kind.
Yeah, yeah, I know. You
Now
know, and
Frankenstein had the outfit, but the creature you never thought you'd see him in one.
yeah, and sure, the movie is has its talky moments. A lot of these will have some talk in there. Sorry for people with weak attention spans these days, but but there's a payoff at the end because I still remember thinking at the time when I was like a kid, when the creature is rampaging this house, he gets loose and he just throws the couch. He just with one hand, he just knocks the couch across the room. He's going after the heroes, and he's trying to pursue people. But there's a bad guy I should mention that he's after, and what's his name now? Oh, gee, I forgot his name. How can I forget his name? I'm not gonna be able to see it. He's in this silent Jeff Morrow, right? He's in this Island Earth, I believe, also. But anyway, he's like the bad guy. Everybody loves to hate. The creature goes after him. It's just, it's a monster on the rampage on land, and I really like what they did in trying to extend this movie to something a little different from just underwater all the time.
I
Although
think you make a great
you
point.
have you have a
I
lot
think
of that too. There's
it's a
underwater
great
action too.
movie, and they coulda just done this. I mean, the first one is one of the great masterpieces of the '50s. I mean, it's a phenomenal movie by one of the best directors of the decade, Jack Arnold, and then he did The Revenge. And, yeah, they coulda just did the third one the same way, but they totally wound up the whole thing in a beautiful way. It's actually kinda moving at the end of it, the final shot, is pretty kinda sad. And, I think you're right. I mean, I think they actually made it a trilogy, rather than just 3 movies that, are repeating the same thing over and over again. It
Yeah,
was really a story arc that goes from the first one right to the third. You can watch the 3 of them together, and you start somewhere and you end somewhere else. It's not just the same thing over and over
and I
again.
won't I won't ruin the ending, but it's a heartbreaking kind of end. It's an emotional ending to the movie. You have to see. Also has Lee Snowden as the female interest in there, and she's pretty. But I think Julia
You had
Adams.
Julie Adams and you had Laurie Nelson, so they always had pretty girls for the
Yeah, they
creature.
had good looking girls in these, and I think Julia Adams is my favorite of the three, still from the original. But there you have it. That's my next pick.
Yeah.
So, okay, Richie, I turn it over to you for the next one.
Alright, my next one, I don't believe, and you touched on this, you mentioned this before, it's one of those movies that Susan Hart is preventing us from owning, or even from seeing for that matter, because it never even shows up anywhere. And it is from 1956, directed by the great Roger Corman. It Conquered the World. So I don't have a DVD or a Blu-ray to show, but I do have, in fact, a little version
That's
of
great.
Beulah, the creature that
And
I
doesn't that make you want to see it right there,
yeah,
folks?
how could you not wanna
Wait, let
see
me
it?
let me blow that up for a second.
Yeah, blow that up. Wait, let me get a better shot of him. But I also have a half sheet over there, but I can't really turn the camera around right now. But yeah, I love this movie. I love all the AIP ones. You mentioned a whole bunch before, and this one is pretty great. It has a phenomenal cast. Peter Graves, is the kind of like the stalwart, dependable hero. But even better is Lee Van Cleef as his buddy, who's somehow communicated with his little radio setup. He's communicated with this alien force that's manipulating him into helping the creature invade the world. It's got all of the great Roger Corman stock people in it. I mean, Dick Miller's in it and Jonathan Hayes and all these guys. But and again, Paul Blaisdell, who is a real unsung hero, he designed a lot of these monsters in the AIP and other movies too, and always at the lowest of low budgets. This guy did not have the big studio behind him, so he always did these things. Him and Bob Burns did these things like with a rubber band and a piece of gum. And the creatures are always inventive. If they're not believable and if they're not necessarily terrifying, they are fun and fantastic just to look at. And this one is completely ridiculous looking, but great. And I guess Corman didn't really want to. Oh no, I mean Blaisdell didn't think the monster was ever going to be shown, out of the like darkness of the cave where he was hiding out or any of that. And I guess Corman decided, nah, we got to show the monster a little more, and it becomes a little funny. But I mean, there's a great battle with Lee Van Cleef and a blowtorch into the monster's eye. But to me, the number one reason to see this movie, and there's a million reasons to see it, but the number one reason is the absolutely brilliant performance by Beverly Garland
Yeah.
as Lee Van Cleef's tough as nails wife, who at one point gets on to, because he's been communicating with this alien on this little like ham radio setup he's got, and at one point she's really pissed at this monster, for taking over the world and amongst other things. And she grabs the microphone and she just starts talking to this monster as if it was like an abusive boyfriend or some guy that harassed her in a bar. I hate you, you son of a bitch. I'm gonna, I can't stand what you've done to this world. And she ends up pulling out a shotgun and goes after him, which you didn't see a lot of women in movies doing in those days. They were all the screaming and hiding variety, but she was not that way. She was a tough broad. And unfortunately, it didn't work out too well for her. But she probably was the toughest character in the movie.
You know, that movie is one that I'm not very familiar with. That's one that's passed me by. And I think I had it on VHS for a while, but yeah, even though you would think I would know all these by heart, and a lot of them by heart, get it, Susan Hart. But
You don't
this
know
one,
them,
no, I don't.
doesn't.
But I'm dying to see it the right way.
Yeah, I have it on VHS. A bunch of those AIPs did come out in the '80s on VHS in the early '90s.
Yeah.
I don't even have a VHS player anymore, and I don't know how they would hold up because the tape tends to fall apart a little bit. But yeah, in essence, it's really not available at all.
It's funny. I'm looking at my list here. I didn't realize this as I was doing the list that a lot of my films, the monsters are different. I think from your monsters and all that, they all have something kind of in common. But let's see as we go on. To wit, the next film that I will show you is a film that, again, I think everybody hates this. This comes along one of the worst films, certainly of Boris Karloff's career.
Sounds great.
Um, but I love it, and I'll tell you the story of why I love it. It's a personal. I hate using the term guilty pleasure, but I got to. The poster's better than the movie, and I'm talking about Frankenstein, 1970. Don't let the poster, you know, really influence you. There's, like it's not this
That doesn't
Frankenstein
happen.
with the square head going after this voluptuous, sexy girl. Not really, sort of. And Karloff is in there, as you can see, collecting some more bucks for a hammy performance. But when I was a kid, what did I know? I loved the original Frankenstein with Karloff, and the newspaper said tonight Frankenstein 1970, and I think the year was 1970. At this memory, it was 19. I thought that's weird. Frankenstein can't be 1970. This is 1970. That
They
Frankenstein's
just
an old
finished the
movie.
movie this afternoon.
So I'm like, what is this? And then I remember I was staying over at a relative's house, and they had a little 13-inch TV set. We didn't know any better. We didn't have these big 55-inch or bigger screens, flat screens. And the movie comes on. The beginning, everybody loves the beginning. The opening scene is fantastic. You got this monster. You only see these claws. kind of like pursuing this woman. She's screaming for her life in fear, and these you see the shots of the feet of the monster and these big boots, like Frankenstein boots, and occasionally you get the nails and the claws and all of this, and it's like, oh, this is going to be good, and you know, he drowned. I spoil a lot of this, but well, I won't spoil it. But he grabs the girl and drowns her, and that's the opening scene. And later on, you find out that's like the best scene of the movie, pretty much, because we talk about Karloff later on being this another descendant, right, of Baron Frankenstein, the original one, and he's allowing a television crew into his home because he has to get money for a nuclear reactor or something. So he's making another monster in the basement, and he has to get the money, securing the funds by having this television crew in his home and putting up with them. He can't stand his snooping and everything, but he is creating a monster. It does have a monster. It does have Karloff as another
Not an
mad
invisible
scientist.
monster.
He's not invisible, although a lot of people love to say the final product is it looks like a mummy. He's all bandaged up. They like to say he looks like he has a garbage pail on his head. It's this big cylinder thing. And I say, without giving too much away, it's really just a casting of whose face will be revealed at the end of the movie. But you do have a monster going around. You have Karloff hamming it up as a mad scientist, another Frankenstein film. Maybe they should have called it Frankenstein 1960 because it doesn't seem much like the 70s and when you look at it now. But it was supposed to be a futuristic film. It was made in 58 and it was supposed to be the future. But I always defend it in the sense that it's got all the right trappings. Like I said, it's got the lab, it's got the mad doctor, it's got victims in the house and going around in some hidden passageways here and there, candlelight, all the kind of things you would expect. Just not. You're expecting more of a traditional Frankenstein, I guess. Monster is the only thing you don't get that you would expect when you go in. But if you know ahead what not to expect and what you're going in for, maybe you can get some enjoyment out of it. I certainly did. I came to like it as the years went on. At first, I was so disappointed as a child, but then they kept replaying it. Sometimes they'd replay the movie the next day or something in the morning. Be Saturday night, and then Sunday morning you could see it again. And I look at Karloff as mad. It's like the Baron in the Mad Monster Party, Bankin and Rass puppet cartoon. He's like a. It's the
Look,
song Monster Man.
with
She's working in the
Karloff,
lab.
to me, there's anything Karloff is in is worth watching, and
Yeah,
probably
it's worth
worth
watching. And
watching.
while he
I
does,
like the old, but like his later ones, the Mexican horror movies from the late
oh, you
60s.
can watch those too.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Snake People, I love that. I mean, it's just Karloff is Karloff. In a bad movie, it's worth watching.
And you got him working with a jar of eyeballs. You got him working massaging a heart and stuff. It's pretty graphic for it's for that time. So
Actually,
that's
they
it. The
should have called
underrated
the movie A Jar of Eyeballs. I think that would have been better than Frankenstein
jar of eyeballs,
1970.
and that's it. Frankenstein 70. All right, Rich, I turn it over to you.
All right, this one is a popular one, but it's very important to me, and I love this movie, and that is The Blob from 1958 with Steve McQueen. And it's funny because I watched this movie so much when I was a kid. This might even be one of those movies that I've seen almost more than any other movie because it's become like cinematic. I don't know. It's become cinematic comfort food to me in a way because it's anytime I'm in a bad mood, this is the movie that'll cheer me up. But when I watched it as a kid, I had no idea it was in color. Everything was on a black and white TV in those days. So it wasn't until it came out on home video in the 80s that I even knew it was in color.
Oh wow.
Man, is it in color. It's really in color.
Yeah.
And really bright. I mean, the blob, I had no idea it was like this glowing, pulsating red thing. But I have to say, I think the blob as a monster is one of the greatest concepts ever for a monster. Just this gelatinous glob that comes out of space and absorbs everything it comes in contact with. You can't reason with it. You can't run from it. You have no idea what you're dealing with. And it just gets redder and redder as it absorbs more blood and more people and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's just such a great idea. And then to mix that with kind of a little bit of a rebel without a cause, gang of teenagers, and you got Steve McQueen running around doing a lot of Steve McQueen stuff. probably
Mhm.
trying out Steve McQueen stuff that he would use later with
And
the
how old is Steve
I said
McQueen in this movie, by the
he's
way?
24 and he's playing like 17, I
Yeah,
guess.
he seems older to me. You know, that's part of the
Yeah,
charm of these. A lot of these
yeah.
guys, the teenagers,
He
have
doesn't
receding
seem like a
hairlines.
teenager. But, they were going for somebody to be cool like James Dean, so they got Steve McQueen. I think they
Steve
did a good
McQueen.
job there.
I used to see that on TV all the time. The Blob. I agree with you. I think the Blob is one of the greatest monsters concept for a monster. I love everything with the Blob. I love the opening scenes, the whole bit with the old man
Yeah, and when
and
he
how
gets it on his arm and
that's how it begins. Yeah, it takes over his arm and then eventually his whole body. And they go to the doctor and then takes over the doctor, eats the doctor and all this kind of stuff. But then, here's the deal. I own the Blob on the Criterion disc. Watched it not too long ago, and I tell you, uh, again, other than the Blob scenes, for me, there's just I don't know, too much. There's drag racing that brings it down or something. I don't know
I
what
like
it is. I
racing.
like the monster scenes in it, but these days when I watch the Blob, it's something that keeps me from having it as a very favorite. Although as a child, it certainly was prevalent on
Well,
television.
to your point there, Joe, I like that stuff only because aside from monster movies, I love like 1950s Americana. I
Oh
like
yeah,
small town America in the 50s. I mean, you're right. When the Blob's not on, it almost plays like it could be like a 50s sitcom or something, or a light drama because it's just like teenagers and, hassles with the police. And yeah, like you said, hot rods and drag racing. I love that stuff.
yeah.
I dig the whole midnight spook bit where they go to this midnight movie show. And what's cool about that, and I went to that theater, the Colonial.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. They have like a blob fest every year and they play the movie. The movie theater is still there, the Colonial. And when you walk inside the lobby, it's exactly like a 50s movie theater. They've completely kept it as is, and it's pretty cool. But I love the fact that also about the movie that's playing in the theater that you
Daughter of Horror.
see, Daughter of Horror, which is actually a movie called Dementia, which came out in '53. Which again, I was talking about Piedras Blancos leading to Eraserhead. This movie Dementia is like it's like a cross between David Lynch and Ed Wood. It's really a creepy movie. It has no dialogue. Very surreal. Maybe a little Luis Buñuel in there. There's some weird gore and violence. And then I guess what they did was it didn't have any kind of audience, and then they reissued it with narration done by a very young Ed McMahon, and then they called it Daughter of Horror, and that's the version that you see in the theater, where he's like, it is I, the demon who possesses your soul. And oddly enough, they have the robot from Forbidden Planet on the poster, which has nothing to do with the thing. If you notice in the when they're in the lobby of the theater, it says Daughter of Horror, and it has Robbie the robot on it.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely a cool monster movie.
You can also get the Dementia, and there's a double feature of Dementia and Daughter of Horror available. I forgot who put it out, but that's worth looking for too. Not as a monster movie, but just as a creepy little surreal 50s movie.
Okay, Rich.
That's that.
Next up for me, you have a poster in the background to start us off, and I got the movie right here, Attack of the 50-Foot Woman. Oh, she's gorgeous. I'm sorry, folks, but I love Allison Hayes as a very attractive, sexy woman. I think
Particularly
she's
when
been.
she's standing over an overpass like that.
Oh yeah, well yeah.
Surprised there weren't
Well,
more car accidents in that
I
movie.
won't say too much about that, but I will say that I think she's been even more. She's used her attributes even more in other movies than this one. This isn't one of her best in that regard, but I saw this on TV
Harry.
all the time as a child. I saw this damn thing. Uh, I think it was Creature Features. So what do we know? She's a drunken, depressed housewife that has a lot of issues, and she has a two-timing husband taking
Harry.
advantage. Harry, I remember Harry. Harry. You see the movie, you can't get that out of your head. So yeah, she's like kind of being used by her husband in a way, who's got another floozy going around in town that he's seeing on Yvette Vickers, right? Yvette Vickers,
Yvette Vickers, yeah.
another sexy woman who I was fortunate. Too bad I don't have my photos. I met a lot of these people. Not I met Yvette Vickers. Um, anyway, so eventually she comes in contact with an alien ship. Nobody believes her because they think she's always just a drunk and always out of her mind and ready for the cuckoo house. I think she was in there before. She maybe was committed once before. Then maybe her husband figures he can get her committed again. I love these crazy plots. Get her committed again, take all her money because she's got money and wealth, and run away with his girl on the side, his honey on the side. But she's still devoted to her Harry. She loves Harry. Nancy does. And eventually, this contact with the ship, there was a giant comes out of the ship, and eventually taints her to the point where she becomes a giant as well at the end of the film. And it's a fast film. To me, this thing moves quick.
Like an hour and 10 minutes or something?
It's really fast and it
I
goes
love the fact that
easy.
the bald-headed giant alien that comes out of this really advanced, flying saucer is wearing, like, a Fred Flintstone outfit.
Yeah,
He dressed like a caveman for some reason.
yeah, it's a caveman Flintstone era
Also,
guy.
another weird thing about that movie is when you see the giant come out of there, he must have been like this driving the flying saucer because there's a scene where, like, the sheriff and his deputy enter the flying saucer, and it's not that big. It
Right,
doesn't
I
look like
know. That's what's
a
funny.
giant.
It's hilarious stuff like that. You're not supposed. If you stop to think about any of this, you're gone. But I love
He's
everybody knows
probably
it.
an alien soapbox racer who got off course and landed on Earth in his
Uh,
little thing, you know?
yep. And there's I mean, I remember he picks up this. He picks up a station wagon. This giant
With that
throws it
with
around.
that paper mache hand.
Uh, and there's a part in there. Yeah, I was going to say when you really terrible. You want to talk about terrible effects. You wonder how sometimes these people can actually keep a straight face when you
Well,
first see that hand.
that's a
You know,
movie I've always wondered about 'cause I gotta be honest with you, when I saw it as a kid, scared me, alright? I did not see it as funny or goofy. A matter of fact, the scene where the nurse goes in the room and all you see is a giant arm, which
yeah,
again
just sitting there.
makes no sense scale-wise, but just this
No,
giant arm in it. But I that scared the hell out of me when I was a kid, and
yeah,
this is one of the movies that was in that montage of the Chiller Theater opening montage. Along
throwing
with
the
things like the Cyclops and Plan 9 from Outer Space, and it all scared me. Like, none of it was silly to me. I mean, but I wonder, if when you watch it now, and it's really funny, and it's really fun to watch, did they this seems like it might have been done even as a comedy because there's some shtick in there, and, I don't know how serious they were with this one.
I don't know. It seemed like they
I'm
took a lot of
confused
it
by that.
serious, but I love every minute of it. I mean, this is the kind of movie when I'm rating it, I want to give it like a solid 3 out of 4 stars. This is a good movie. It's a good
It's
cheesy,
purely you're
stupid
never gonna
monster
be
movie.
bored watching it. It's nothing but fun. Smile on
Yeah,
your face.
it is. It's a good time. Some of it for all the wrong reasons, but oh,
That's
it's good.
And this interesting director, Nathan Hertz, who also went by the name of Nathan Joran.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did like The Brain from Planet Eros, which is great.
Mm.
He did 20 Million Miles to Earth. He did The Deadly Mantis. And then he did First Men in the Moon, which is a British movie from a little later on. But interesting guy, interesting movie. And those movies are a little more serious. That's why I'm thinking maybe it
And
was
he also directed a lot of episodes of Lost in Space. So
Lost in Space, The
later on.
Time Tunnel, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. I mean, he did a lot of stuff that kids in the 60s were entertained by.
All right.
Not to
Okay,
mention a
Richie.
million westerns and, crime dramas and tons of other
The
stuff.
great late Nathan Duran.
Yes.
Okay, what do you got next, Rich?
All right, well, I'm not totally through with blob territory yet. So now I'm gonna go for an Italian blob movie, Caltiki,
Oh, I've never seen that. The
The
immortal
Immortal
monster?
Monster. It's
Yeah.
great, Joe. You wanna see this. This also played a lot. This was a Channel 9 one. I do kinda judge a lot, or I shouldn't say judge, I remember a lot of movies by the channels they were on when I was a kid. Like, all of the Universal International movies were on Channel 2. They were either on the early show or the late show. All the AIP movies were on ABC on Channel 7, and all of the foreign horror films were on Channel 9. And they had a thing called Supernatural Theater, but this one played on Million Dollar Movie, which would play the movie every day at the same time and then twice on Saturdays. And so I saw a lot of this one, and this one is black. It's a black and white blob movie, and it's gorier than the blob. It's directed by Riccardo Frida, who did a lot of great more gothic kind of Italian gothic horror movies. But it's kind of it's almost like a Thing version with like Christian Nyby or Howard Hawks. The rumor is that it was actually directed, or a lot of it was, by Mario Bava.
Oh,
So
really?
a lot of people consider that his first movie rather than Black Sunday. But it's you would really like it. It's really creepy. It's really, it's got a lot of the goofy, campy stuff too. But it's actually the Blob. It's a much more. It's almost like the monster of Piedras Blancos version of the Blob,
Hmm.
because it's just, not that the, the regular Blob is, a comic figure, but this one is nastier. It's a nastier Blob.
Nastier than the original Blob.
And
All
it's,
right.
it's an Italian movie, so you got the great dubbing, which always makes it a more
Yeah,
fun experience.
yeah, yeah. No, that sounds like a good one. I don't know how I've missed it. I've certainly heard the title a million times in my life, but
Well, this
never
is one
seen it.
that I searched for forever because it was never available, and for years neither was Piedras Blancos. I'm going back to when, like, home video, the '80s and early '90s, and then Arrow put it out a couple of years
Arrow.
ago. It's a
Arrow.
beautiful package. It's a beautiful, the movie. The print is great. There's commentaries, all kinds of stuff on there. So I recommend that. I think you'd like that one.
All right. I'm going to definitely keep that in mind. I'm always looking to build up my monster movie collection.
Yeah,
And, and
can't go wrong with the Blob.
I'm noticing as I'm looking, as I said before, at my list that all a lot of these different kinds of monsters, there's a certain kind of monster. I didn't even think about it, but let's go keep it going. One of my all-time favorite '50s films in this genre, How to Make a Monster.
You get a
Yeah,
lot of monster for your buck in that one.
yeah, I love this movie. Oh man, I used to go to school, and people were always, "Oh, you watch monster movies? What'd you think of the ball game last night? Who cares? I watched How to Make a Monster." And this made me wish I could do this to some of the people that I knew back then who made fun of monsters. Basically, it's a really cool story, I think, here about a makeup man, and they make it look like almost like AIP is this big studio. This along like Fox or Paramount. He's a makeup man, Pete, and he's got an assistant, and he's been doing makeup since, I guess, the silent era. And a new regime comes into the studio, decides they don't want any more monster movies. Those days are gone. Monsters are out. We're going to get rid of a lot of people here. We're going to pink slip them. We don't like monsters. It's going to be now musicals. We're going to do like MGM type musicals. So they want to oust this guy, and he realizes that he's not going to go without a fight. So he happens to be uh, the guy who supposedly makes up the teenage werewolf up there. It's not played by Michael Landon in this one. And the teenage Frankenstein, which I mentioned earlier, there still played by Gary Conway. Um, he makes them up for the latest movie, supposedly called Werewolf Meets Frankenstein, and they're fighting each other in his latest movie. Because he comes up with a kind of hypnotizing component that he can mix into the makeup and then put it on the actor's skin, and it kind of paralyzes the will and makes them susceptible to do what he tells them to do. So, in the guise of the teenage werewolf and the teenage Frankenstein monster, the makeup man makes them kill the enemies one by one, the people who are taking over this studio. And I always figured I'd like to, as a kid, I'm like, I wish I could do that to some of these people that hate monster movies. So, I don't really mean it, folks. I'm kid stuff. But yeah, it's like a revenge
Better
kind of
be
thing.
careful there, Joe.
A revenge. I might just make a special makeup one day, folks, out there, put it on you. But I think it's a great idea, for a movie. So they kind of like play their parts, as actors. These young actors who are playing the characters, they go out and play their parts for real and really kill people. Uh, it's kind of like a sequel in a way to I Was a Teenage Werewolf and I Was a Teenage Frankenstein. It's the
Yeah.
best you can get. Although the ending of the movie is really downer to me. The ending is kind of disappointing.
Yeah, but you get
It
that
could,
great where they switch to color, which they did
yeah.
on a bunch of
Although
those.
they do switch to color, it's a black and white film. But at the end, they have a color, fiery finale, and
What's
the
cool about
flames
it
in
is you
color.
see a lot of masks and costumes from other, like, a matter of fact, you see other AIP movies. You see uh, Beulah from It Conquered
It
the
conquered the
World on the
world.
one wall, and the She
She
Creature,
creature, yeah.
a couple of other ones, but and I think they actually burned them. Those were some of the original, the
They
last remaining.
really did, huh?
They let that in that fire, they actually did destroy
Uh,
some of the old artifacts.
all right,
But
that's
I dig
my
that movie.
pick.
That movie's a lot of fun because it also takes place around that little studio, which is kind of like AIP. So it gives you
Yeah,
like,
they're kind of making it as if like American International Pictures,
yeah,
I guess has this huge studio as though they were like Fox or
yeah.
MGM or something
They have
like
the
that.
scene where he kills the executive. It's almost like he's strangling Nicholson or Arkoff or something.
Yeah, yeah, it would be like that. Yeah, and in that scene when the teenage werewolf is actor is strangling one of the new studio heads, all this drool and
Yeah,
spittle is coming out of his mouth and everything. Yeah, it's great. I'm
it's
laughing.
good.
People who aren't into this stuff. Look at us. What are you laughing about? It's fun. That's just the fun stuff we grew up with.
Well, I'll tell you an interesting story around the next movie I'm going to show you, and exactly around how people can react to these movies who don't know anything about them, because they
Okay.
really are all the one thing all of these movies have in common. If you didn't grow up with them, and particularly if you're younger and you're watching movies now, because young people, some of them can't even take black and white. They can't take the way actors used to, behave on screen in older movies. It's just they're not used to it, and it all seems weird to them. But anyway, I'll tell you a funny story, but it's based around this movie, my next choice, sticking with AIP, and it's the War of the Colossal Beast.
Yeah.
You want to talk about weird monsters?
Oh yeah.
A giant bald-headed guy with a deformed face and no eyeball in one socket. And this is, of course, the sequel to the Amazing Colossal Man, which was a huge hit.
If I may interrupt you for a minute,
You may.
see the thing, Amazing Colossal Man is not available
Right.
regularly because of Susan Hart, but she does not own War of the Colossal Beast, hence we have it on Blu-ray.
Well, there's a how to make a monster as well. There's a handful of AIP movies
Yeah.
that have been available. They've been on VHS, they've been on DVD, and now a lot of them are on Blu-ray and coming out. Those are the ones that she doesn't have. But this one is I really love this movie, and to me, this is a great example. I put this in the same category with Evil Dead from the '80s, is where the sequel actually rendered the original irrelevant because they repeat, I'd say 20 minutes of the original. They take all the good parts of the
Right,
original,
right.
put it in this, but they take it to another level because at the end of Amazing Colossal Man, he's up on the dam, Hoover Dam, and he gets shot in the eye with a bazooka, which happens, and he falls into the dam. Now he's back with no eye, and then I guess it's his sister. Is it his sister or his girlfriend? I forget.
I don't remember, but he makes a lot of noise. I know
Oh,
that.
his the voice they used for this thing, it was the same in the Cyclops,
The
all
Cyclops.
Bird Eye Gordon movies, Mr. Big. I don't know what the hell they did. It's a cross between some kind of animal and like a tractor backing up. It actually, again, it's completely bizarre when you watch it now, but it creeped the hell out of me when I was a kid because it was like this growling, snarling giant with half the deformed face and an eye out, and it's just really creepy. But this one is his sister. Again, I can't believe I forgot. It's either his sister or his girlfriend.
I don't remember.
Some woman in his life goes searching for him because she thinks he's in Mexico because she's heard
Might
a
have been
news.
Sister.
Yeah, I think you're right. She's she's heard a news report that trucks full of food have been disappearing on like desert highways, and of course, so that would lead you to think, oh, it's probably Glenn, my brother, who's now 60 feet tall. There's also that great moment where she gets the local army guy, the local military guy, and the local sheriff to help her look, and they're out in the desert and they find a footprint. And then one of the guys goes, "Well, this footprint looks to appear to be of a man who might be 60 feet tall." And she goes, "Wait a minute, Glenn was 60 feet tall." So they know they're on the right track. But it's a really, really, really insane movie, and
Yeah,
and I
it's like the Amazing Colossal Man on steroids or goes nuts.
yeah, and it's just so bizarre because for an idea for a monster. But
Yeah.
here's the interesting thing. I had a friend of mine who, real movie buff like me, loved every kind of movie. His whole life revolved around movies, and he had some kids, and he had a son who, when his son became like a teenager, really was interested in movies, and his father had been turning him on to movies ever since he was little. And he tells the story about how, and the kid was, unlike a lot of younger people, was open. I probably shouldn't say that because there's probably a lot more younger people open to this than I know about. but he just was open to every kind of movie, stuff that you wouldn't think young kids in the 2000s would be into, westerns, John Wayne movies. He could see something in everything, but eventually the movies he gravitated to and loved the most were foreign films. His dad turned him on to a lot of foreign films, and particularly like Antonioni and Godard, like the really surreal Fellini. He liked weird offbeat movies, which led his dad to turn him on to David Lynch movies, which he completely fell in love with. So there was a theme with this kid of what he liked. So his dad said to me one time, where can I go? He wants more like that. What can I play him that's going to blow his mind? I mean, this kid loves Lynch. He's seen every Lynch. He loves like foreign films. He loves surrealistic films. I've played him, all of the oldies, and so I said, I'll tell you what you do. And I recommended War of the Colossal Beast, because I said, if he doesn't know 50s monster movies, and he said he doesn't, I said, I'm just really curious what someone who's obviously an intelligent person learning about film now would make of that. Because like, as we've said, these movies exist in a weird vacuum. It's just a weird place. And if you're not into the groove of what's happening with these movies, they could be a little unsettling. So he says he played it for his son. He said, 10 minutes into the movie, his son just turned and looked at him like, what the hell is this? Continued watching it. Anyway, long story short, and the kid loved it. He fell in love with it. He couldn't
That's great.
believe it. And he was just like, who is this movie made for? Like, what was the audience in the 50s like that, like followed this story? Is like, okay, yes, I see, 50, and that's exactly what I thought would happen. Because if you don't know those movies and you're not like, used to that, because they didn't even exist after that. I mean, they really are a part of that time. And horror movies started to change, and even monster movies, which got almost more kiddie-like. I'm thinking of like a lot of the Godzilla movies in the late 60s
Yeah.
and all the stuff and then the 70s movies that either got gorier and in that way and more sexual, or more silly. But these are just bizarre. I mean, a movie like The War of the Colossal Beast, for anyone who hasn't seen it, is completely insane. And that's why it's
Yeah. Yeah. It's insane. The colossal man on drugs.
no.
Try to like see if I'm going to change this up because I see a lot of similarities. All right, I'm going to go to something a little bit different for my list so far. I think a little out of sequence. Um, I actually rewatched this last night. I know I love this movie, but I said just I want to rewatch it, see if it's going to be on my list because I'm trying to do like 15 to 20 of my very favorites. There are like 40 of these things I had listed. This is one I caught on TV. And it's got a monster in it, a creature, not like all these. Most of these are like man or woman monsters that I'm having here. This one is a monster in the title too, and it's the monster that challenged the world.
Yay! That's on my list.
All right, we got the
That's
second
coming
one
up.
we hit. Now let's talk about it because we can go bounce off each other. Yeah, I remember seeing this on TV, and I always thought monster movies are cool. I ain't really afraid too much. Oh, that's neat. That's cool. Sometimes it could be unsettling. Like House on Haunted Hill, which I don't have on this list, but you know.
Great one.
Anyway, that was unsettling. But anyway, back to this. I remember like this monster, a scene where it destroyed somebody that was in the ocean, and he comes bobbing up to the surface. That shot looked like a football player almost. Has almost like what I thought was a football helmet. He's what was he, a diver or something that they find
Yeah, he
in the
was a
water, and he's
Navy
kind of like
guy.
his eyeballs are bulging out. It's just
Mhm.
he's bobbing in the water.
He was
That's
a
a
good
very
effect.
unsettling shot, and very Jaws like this movie. I was after watching it, a precursor to Jaws. Like, don't go in the water, beach, swim, no swimming, and there's even a scene in there where a young woman is swimming with her boyfriend. He disappears, and she's like, "Where are you? Where are you?" And she gets dragged underneath the water,
Yeah, that's
just like we saw.
right out of Jaws, or the other way around, I should
Yeah,
say.
in Jaws, and that's Jaws is out of it. It's
Yeah.
like this, and it makes me think of Jaws. It's early Jaws, but these are what do they call those things? I had the word in my mind that with this these creatures, Richie. What are
Yeah,
they called?
it's a sea mollusk,
A
kind
mollusk.
of a
That's what it is.
snail. This
Sea
movie came at the end of the whole like insect, phase, giant insect phase. I think they were running out of insects because they did, obviously tarantula and them and the deadly mantis. I mean, the grasshoppers in beginning of the end. So yeah, this is a sea mollusk.
and it's destroying these swimmers, divers, etc. And I think a lot of times the effects are really bad in these movies, but I think the monster looks pretty damn good, considering this is one of the better looking monsters. I think.
I think
Would
so
you
too.
agree? And I
But
love as a scientist in here, they have Hans Conried in here, who know from watching I Love Lucy. He's on a bunch of I Love Lucy episodes, and he's always comical. There's one where he's teaching them perfect diction or something like that, and
yeah,
he has them sing these "I as I tippy tippy toe through my garden." This kind of
he
silly.
did a similar routine in the Patsy, a Jerry Lewis movie. But
Oh
he was
yeah,
a
he's the
regular. He was a regular. He was Uncle Tanoose on the Danny Thomas show.
Uncle Tanoose, and
Uh,
he's always comical, right? I mean,
Oh wait, yeah,
he's
he's a comedic actor. Did
so
you ever
yeah.
see what was it, the 5,000 Fingers of Dr. T,
Never saw it.
which is a from the 50s? It's like a Dr. Seuss thing, but it's really again very very David Lynch like, and he's in that.
So I get a kick out of seeing him as a serious scientist this time, and he's in there. There's this part where this mollusk comes out of the water, threatening everybody on the boat. He's on the boat. He's like, the guy's trying to stab him, and the
In the eye.
Conread is going, hit him in the eye, get the eye. And he's telling him he's instructed him to take his eye out. This is good. And then the end scene where the woman and her daughter are kind of trapped in the. That was scary as a
Yeah.
kid to me, and him
That
breaking
movie
through the
has one of
door
the
with.
great jump scares of all time too. If you remember
Oh,
the
yeah.
scene where the old man, the old watchman, is like he's doing something around the dam where he has to keep walking back and forth, and the scene drags on,
Yeah.
and he's tightening a thing, and he's looking at that, and he thinks he hears something, he doesn't see it, and you're just waiting and waiting and waiting, and then when you don't expect it, he turns around and the thing is right behind him. Now we've never
Yeah,
seen
yeah.
it out of the water until that point, so somehow it got out of the water, just for this, just to have this effective moment.
Yeah, it's a good monster movie. Yeah,
Yes, it really
definitely.
is.
I highly recommend that one.
I
The
love it.
monster that challenged the world.
Although he didn't really challenge the world, he kind of challenged one very small
Yeah, there's a
town
part where the scientist is saying,
inside.
if these things ever, because there are a lot of them, and they could be the eggs, they have eggs with other ones, and if they ever got into a major city like New York or something, it could take over the world.
Yeah.
What do you got?
All right. Up next, I have a movie that is much better than its ridiculous title would lead you to believe, and it is "I Married a Monster from Outer Space." And it's this is directed by Gene Fowler Jr., who also did "I Was a Teenage Werewolf." And this one, I love this movie. Do you know this one?
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, Gloria Talbot. I have it. I own
Yeah.
it.
It
But
kind
I
of
don't know
plays
if there's some good shots and good scenes in
It
there of
plays
the
to me, it
alien.
plays like an extended episode of The Outer Limits.
That's cool. Yeah.
Um, and it's got an interesting story because it's like the monster, the alien comes down and he takes over the body of a soon to be married man. Or did they just
I
get
don't know
married?
if they're married
That how
already or
that
what.
plays, yeah.
What?
But there's this whole and so gradually he's trying to learn about Earthlings, and through this woman who's Gloria Talbot, and she's really beautiful and cool, and he he starts to gradually kind of fall for her, I guess, right? Even as the alien. And you
Mm.
at first you don't know what the aliens look like. And then when you see, and I think you're talking about that shot where the lightning in the
That's
window
a
and
great shot where
his
he
face.
zaps somebody and then you see his reflection in the window. I think it is
Yeah,
with the hood on. Or something.
that's great. Well, yeah, yeah, which looks like it's right out of M, the Fritz Lang movie, where he's looking
Yeah.
in the toy store window because he's an expectant. They're all going. Once this guy does it, there's a bunch of other aliens that are going to take over all of the local husbands, so they can impregnate their wives. But it's really funny because it turns out to be about like commitment and relationships and the fear of that. They're always hanging out at the bar as
Mhm.
as regular husbands until they one by one they become taken over by this monster, by
Mm.
their particular monster. And again at the end, I think that it's pretty funny. There is some great effects because they also, when they kill the monsters, they melt. You remember? But
Been a
the
long time, but I remember
the alien
some.
plot is thwarted by a gang of expectant dads whose wives are all ready to give birth.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
so they run and they said that's the only way. No, I don't know if it's the doctor says the only men we know who are real men are men who are expectant. That's right, or whose wives are about to give birth, because the aliens haven't figured out how to do that yet. So he goes to a maternity ward where all these dads are just waiting for their wives to give birth, and drags them all to help fight the aliens. That's what it was. Yeah.
Well, I know one thing. When I did watch it the last time, it's been some years now. I think that was one that I'm voting for an upgrade. I think it needs to get an upgraded copy. I think
Well, it's a crappy DVD, is what it is.
it wasn't that, but
Not
it
on
wasn't that
Blu-ray.
good
Yeah,
quality wise.
but I think it's a great movie, and I'm actually due for another viewing because I forgot how good it was.
All right. What do I got next here? Back to what I same kind of stuff I was doing. Look, I love the classic monsters, Frankenstein, Dracula, all that kind of stuff. And one of my favorite '50s movies is The Return of Dracula. You know, Francis Lederer plays the vampire Dracula in this, and there's a great prologue here where they talk about Dracula in modern times. They've never been able to destroy him. None of the efforts to end this evil was successful. So the search continues for Dracula to this very day. And I like, again, it's like, again, it's modern. I love when they do that. Domestic or suburban. It's kind of like Dracula comes to Mayberry. It's like I don't know, like the Andy Griffith Show
Bowery!
or something like that. And there he is on the back. I know I got a glare here, folks. Sorry about that. It's a staking scene. It's a staking scene where it goes red for a second too. It's black and white film, but when one of the girls gets staked, it turns to blood red for a second when you see the blood come out. But yeah, Francis Lederer, I think, is very, very good in this, in a role that he hated doing. He really didn't want to do this role as Dracula. He really didn't, and I thought he did a good job in it. In a way, it's kind of almost like he looks like Ricky Ricardo a little bit, to me, with the hair doing everything. I don't know, but yeah, he takes over the identity of a relative. Well, they're expecting cousin Balak with a C to come to visit them from Europe, and Dracula, takes over his persona, and then he poses as this uncle that they really don't know, since maybe they were kids, the old people, as they were children. I hadn't seen them in a long time, and yeah, it's just really, really cool the way he's able to do that, to take over the identity. And there's some
It's
good slow motion.
it's reminiscent of Shadow of a Doubt, the Hitchcock movie,
Oh, yeah, I didn't see Shadow of a
where
Doubt.
the girl's uncle comes to
Oh,
town,
is
and
that the one with Joseph Cotton?
yes, where he's
Then I
actually
did
a
see
serial
Shadow of a
killer.
Doubt. Right.
He's a
Okay.
serial
Yes.
killer,
Yes.
and
Didn't know the
but
title.
it's very
Yeah.
similar to that. It plays
Yeah,
like that.
that's what it is. But there's stuff like when he rises out of the coffin, they have this kind of smoke and mist coming out, and it's kind of like weird. It's not slow motion, but it's some kind of thing. I don't know how many frames they shoot, unusual frames, to give you an eerie effect of him rising out of the coffin. He's very good, Francis Lederer, in it, and there's some good mystical, creepy trappings like that I like. You know, so yeah, and all put in a home, a little modern 1950s Mayberry town,
Yeah, I like that
Raccoon
idea.
Hill. So
There's
I love
also
it.
one, is it The Curse of the Undead, where it's like Dracula in a Western?
Yeah, I just saw that, and
Mhm.
I just got that and want to
Yeah, the
rewatch. It's not on my
the
list though, but
gunslinging Dracula.
yeah, yeah, it's a gunslinging vampire. Yeah, yeah. All right.
All right,
Ne-
next to me is another masterpiece movie, Joe. I don't know if you're going to agree with me on this, but
Oh boy.
this is a childhood nightmare if there ever was one, and it's Invaders from
When you
Mars.
when you said childhood nightmare, I said
You
it's
knew,
got to
right?
be Invaders from Mars.
Oh man, again, and you talk about needs an upgrade. Criterion should do this, or Arrow,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
these, because this is only on DVD and it leaves a little to be desired. I'll tell you.
You can't
But
even trust your parents in that one.
well, that's what's so creepy about it. And again, it plays. It's also very surreal. It's directed by William Cameron Menzies, who's like was primarily known as a production designer, Gone with the Wind, and tons of other movies. And it's got a beautiful look to it, like just that like hill that he sees through his bedroom window that goes over where he sees the flying saucer land.
Been a long time for this one too.
Yeah, it's like a kid, like his what is he, like a 8, maybe 9-year-old boy, maybe 10, I don't know.
And this one's in
Somewhere
color, we
around
should mention, right?
it's really vivid color, and he wakes up, he hears some sound in the middle of the night, and he looks out, and he, lives out in the middle of wherever, the woods or something, and he looks out his back window, and he sees, like, some bright light coming down, maybe it's a flying saucer or something, and he just sees it crash behind this, like, little overpass and this little bridge. It looks like it's right out of, Oklahoma or something. Anyway, so he gradually comes to realize that aliens have landed and are taking over all of the adults, and including his parents. And the way that he can tell is, you can see a little pin in their back, in the back of their neck. And when his father, he gets into an argument with his father, and his father, who in the beginning is a very loving dad, like, they're having some argument, and he smacks him. It's pretty violent and pretty brutal for that, and he smacks the kid, like, across the room. And then,
Mhm.
of course, later on, he sees the pin in the back of his dad, and I believe there's a teacher, is the only one, this woman, who believes her, so she becomes his surrogate parents, and trying to get down to the bottom of this. But there's scenes where he goes to, like, the police station, and the way the sets are designed, it really just looks like it's in a dream or a nightmare, and it's just these. There's nothing in the buildings. It's all, like, white, but you just see, like, the big desk with everything is from a child's point of view.
That
This big
I'm
desk.
visualizing that in my
Yeah.
mind, even though I'm not overly familiar with it, I can
With
see
the
that
police
image in my mind.
standing there, and everyone's against them because they've all been taken over, and it's got a really bizarre ending, like a never-ending ending, where he everything turns out okay, but then the same thing happens. It's this cycle, but it's really, really good. It's really smart,
Is
and
Hillary Brooke in there, from Hillary
yes,
Brooke from
yes.
the Abbott and Costello TV show,
Yep,
mainly?
that's right, Hillary's in there.
That's right.
Arthur Franz, I think, is some kind of local scientist guy who they bring in to help them, and I forgot, let me say, it should say who the actress is who plays, yeah, Arthur Franz. Helena Carter is the teacher that helps him, and little Jimmy Hunt, who was in
Yeah.
tons of 50s stuff. I think he was in, is it which the one, the kid with the robot? Is that Tobor the Great, maybe? One of those, like, kid gets a robot movies from the 50s.
Not the Colossus of New York,
No, no.
no, which almost made my list too. So there's so
Well,
many films, folks, I wanted to put on this list.
Invaders from Mars must be upgraded.
Yeah,
We need a good
okay.
version of that. It's a really good.
We need an upgrade. Speaking of upgrades, I love that lead in. All right,
Mm,
this movie, it could be my number one 50s movie, but it's not. Something else I'm going to put for my very number one. Let me build this up a little bit first. This is a movie I saw on TV constantly growing up from the 50s. And it's been released. I think it's a public domain release. It's been released in the public domain. It's been released by bigger companies trying it out too. But there's never been the definitive copy for my liking of this thing. And we all have that movie that maybe we've had upgraded a million times, and we had more copies of this movie than any other movie in your
yep.
collection. And for me, this one is the one. I want to build it up. But I really wish we could get it. There's even some scenes that I'm still missing. I don't know if they exist anymore that were never in the finished print. And as the result of that, a couple of scenes are a little confusing. Well, anyway, let's show you the movie. It's Lon Chaney in Indestructible Man.
Oh yeah.
This one says widescreen. Well, I mean, I have so many of these. This is a retro media copy. And Lon Chaney collected some serious booze bucks for another appearance in a movie. It was, I believe, filmed in '54, but it was released in '56. And it's basically about a guy that is going to the electric chair, and he has the name of Butcher Benton. He's a criminal that stashed a lot of money away, and he has a rotten, stinking lawyer that does him no good, and kind of like
Lousy, rotten, stinking lawyer.
you know. And he's played by, I forget his name too. You can never think of these things. Oh, he's a very popular actor, and I forget his name. I'll remember it later. I'll be like, damn, why didn't I remember it? But anyway, uh, but he's really a real low life as lawyer, and you know, and there's a whole bunch of other guys that wound up betraying him, criminals. Squeamy Ellis, they get these weird names. Squeamy Ellis,
I like
Joe
that.
Marcelli, all these
Jimmy
guys, and it's
Ellis sounds like a real safe cracker.
So
You can do it,
yeah,
Squeamy.
so he vows, the butcher Benton vows that he's going to survive somehow. He's going to get out of here, and he's going to come back, and he's going to get his revenge and kill Squeamy Ellis and Joe Marcelli and his lawyer Paul Lowe. I know his name's Russell something, but I can't think of his name. Well, anyway, the
Not Russell Johnson.
lawyer. No, no, not the professor. But
Is he was in too?
anyway, and then luckily, after he what a stroke of luck! After he gets electrocuted, his corpse is brought back for experimentation by a couple of scientists who happen to be. One of them is Robert Shane, who is from The Adventures of Superman, Inspector Henderson, and he overacts greatly in this, which is hilarious.
He's in
And
Invaders from Mars too.
who's the other guy? What?
No, Robert Shane is also in Invaders from Mars.
Invaders from Mars. Hey, what a segue, right? And the other guy is, I believe, Joe Flynn, who was on McHale's Navy. And these guys,
Blood bottom.
they inadvertently bring Lon Chaney back to life, and because Chaney was, drinking so much and everything, they keep him mute through the whole thing. They say his vocal cords are burned out, maybe because he's drunk all the
Yeah.
time when they made
Bourbon
this.
will do that.
But he's like, indestructible. I mean, he take a pair of scissors and he stabs his hand with the scissors and nothing happens. And he's a monster now. Bullets don't stop him and all this kind of stuff. And it's a typical thing I like, a man-made type of monster thing, on the loose. And I like the way that it's filmed in a dragnet type of style. You've got Casey Adams is like
Oh, right, yeah. Yeah, I
he's
remember.
like a detective or reporter. He's like, when they this kind of narration over it, and then the butcher, the next day the butcher was uh, looking for his friend Squeamy Ellis,
It was butchering.
all this kind of stuff.
He was
And they
butchering.
have this really cool trolley ride, right? It's in Los Angeles called. I looked it up. Is it Angels Flight, which is like a trolley that goes up and he uses to like walk up there to find his victims and everything. The whole look and feel of it. I don't know. I get that thing with some movies from childhood. Reminds me of like growing up in the neighborhoods I grew up in and stuff. And I used to live in a neighborhood where they had L trains and on the top. And some of the stores where I bought my monster magazines, like Famous Monsters and Castle of Frankenstein and all that, were under the L trains and candy stores. So I have like this connection when I see the Angels Flight, I think it's called.
Yeah, I
I
know what
think
you're
like
talking about. They use that in Kiss Me Deadly too.
yeah, I just love the feel of it. I love the feel. It's got a noir film noir feel to it
Mhm.
as well. It's one of my all time favorites. But yeah, it's missing a couple of scenes that never were in there. One of them is when the butcher actually breaks into a police station, I think, and to kill the lawyer, and it's not in there. I think the lawyer emerges unscathed in the final cut because they don't have it in there. But well, I really wish they'd get an ultimate copy of this. But
Yeah, I've only ever seen that in public domain copies.
yeah, and that's it.
All
You're
right.
up.
All right. Next up, again. Now, this was part of the one we originally were going to do 10, and then Joe popped it on me last night that it was going to be 15. So I
And
didn't
now
get a
20.
chance.
But anyway, we'll see how we do.
Who knows? It might be 30. But so I didn't have a chance to dig out because a lot of my things that aren't on Blu-ray, a lot of DVDs I have packed away in the attic or in the basement or whichever is the one that's on the bottom, attic, basement, I forgot. But I just couldn't get hold of all of the different things. So the next up is from 1959 and it's called The Hideous Sun Demon.
Yeah.
Another big Chilla Theater favorite. And since I didn't have a DVD or a Blu-ray to show you, I do have my Hideous Sun Demon
Keep going, Rich.
Barbie. This is my Barbie doll of the Hideous Sun Demon. Wait, let me get that on camera so you can get the full cuteness or adorableness of this thing. And it's a little yeah, it's a little Barbie doll of the Hideous Sun Demon.
All right.
That's when Barbie decided she was bored with Ken.
Barbie.
Yeah, it's my Hideous Sun Demon Barbie. Anyway, yeah, you
this
see,
was this
that's what
wasn't
I
this
that's
wasn't
what I
on my
couldn't
list, by
find.
the
I have
way.
that somewhere.
I did pull it off the shelf just so we could look at it.
Okay.
Uh, it wasn't one of my picks for this one, although I do like it.
Well, I like it. It's kind of like a reverse version of the werewolf.
Yeah.
He gets exposed to some nuclear contamination, the usual. but it's the sunlight that turns him into the creature, and rather than a werewolf, he turns into like a reptilian creature.
Yeah.
Uh, what I love about this movie, though, is it's a little sleazier than you usually get from these movies, meaning he's really into drinking and womanizing. And even though he's got the loving girl, he's a scientist, he's got his loving scientist girlfriend who's, trying to help him after this thing happened. He goes out every night because he can only go out at night. He can't go out in the day because he has to hide from the sun. And at night he goes out to this bar and there's some hot, slutty, songstress, piano player there, and he drinks at the bar and he gets drunk and he starts, hooking up with this buxom blonde. And it's a different kind of thing for a monster.
It was a lousy actress, which makes it funny. Just that lousy
The
song on the
piano
piano.
playing.
She's doing that piano thing
Yeah,
when she's
like she
doing.
doesn't even touch the keys. And it was directed by the guy who starred in it, Robert Clark, who's
Yeah.
good. And he was also great in The Man from Planet X, which almost made my list. It's a great early 50s one. But there's also a version that exists, and it's not this DVD that you and I have, because there is a scene where, as the hideous sun demon, he grabs a rat and
It's in my
bites.
mind.
It is? Is it
I
on
just
there? Where he
watched it
bites
not too
the
long
head off
ago.
and
Yeah.
squeezes it?
Yeah. I
Then
don't know if they redid it or something, but it's
I
definitely
might
on.
stand corrected, and if it is on there, then I might be mistaken. Like maybe the scene does go a little farther.
There were versions where they didn't have it.
Okay,
This
but
one
this
it
one
is.
did, and I have that one too.
You see him in the closet or whatever he's in, and with the
Yeah,
rat.
grabs it, but they didn't have that on
No,
the old VHS
it was
version.
missing for a while, on something else I had. Probably the VHS.
And it also there's a scene that's a little bit of a homage slash rip off of Frankenstein, where he goes and he sees a little girl out playing with her little
Yeah.
tea set, and he goes and he sits down, and any minute he's going to turn into the creature, which he does, but he doesn't
Yeah.
throw her into a lake.
Yes, sir.
All
Just
right.
reading something else. All right. Next up. Well, we're up to 90 minutes almost. All right. I've got a movie called The Alligator People.
Yay, Beverly Garland again.
And Beverly Garland, yeah, she's great in anything. I met her, boy. I'm so happy. I have a great photo with us together. I'll show it to you sometime. Yeah, what do you do with this? You got Lon Chaney again into my, you know,
You gator.
it
Lon
says
Chaney with a hook hand.
she gets
I'll
married
kill
to,
you, gator
yeah,
man.
yeah. I'll kill you, alligator man, just like I'd kill any four-legged gator. I love that line. It's a great classic line. She's a young wife, and she's on a train with her new husband, and then oh, well, look at this. It says abandoned by her husband, Lon Chaney. Chaney doesn't play her husband, but that's what it says on the box. Anyway, and he disappears. Where did he go? She's got there's a search for him, and it turns out that I don't know, he runs afoul or something of a test, and he winds up turning into this alligator man. It starts out with this makeup, which is good enough right there. He's like scaly looking. That's a cool looking out makeup. But then later on, it actually gets to the point where, which is ridiculous. I think it looks ridiculous, but it's fun. He gets a complete alligator head with snout and teeth and everything. Guy's running around with an
That
alligator head
weird
on.
mask that they had him in before he's revealed, they had a bunch of them walk. That was creepy looking. Do
Yeah,
you remember that weird kind of surgical mask thing they had on?
yeah,
It
yeah.
was almost
Different.
like in
Yeah,
the shape of the alligator's snout, so you didn't know what he was going to look like.
yeah. Right. Then he gets the full alligator, but it's really cool. That I like the whole idea. Well, the story first that she's searching is interesting for him anyway, and going to where are they going? The Everglades? I don't know where she goes.
Yeah.
Louisiana, the bayous, Louisiana Bayou, and Cheney plays this another drunk who's got his hand was taken off by an alligator or crocodile or whatever, probably an alligator, and he has a hook on his
Little
hand.
homage to Peter Pan there.
Peter Pan, Captain Hook,
Only
Lon
not
Chaney.
quite.
And he hates alligators as a result of this. That's why he's yelling at the gators. He wants revenge on there. It's that it's that gator Paul, or something like that. What he says.
One of my least favorite gators is that
Yeah.
Paul.
So I love it. And Beverly Garland's always a joy. I like that she's always pretty game to
Yeah,
do these movies.
she's not a wimp. She's always the tough broad, ready to go head to head with whatever creature. She was also Not of This Earth is a great Beverly Garland performance, and
And I'll
Toulouse.
say that's out of all the movies that I've mentioned, Rich. I think that's my newest movie in the sense that I've grown an appreciation for that when I got it on DVD.
Yeah.
I don't think I really, it's not one of my childhood favorites. A new favorite.
Yeah. No, it's been a favorite of mine for a long time, but I didn't watch that one as a kid. I got it. I probably was turned on to that in the 80s. I mean, it was one that kind of slipped by me.
And I think it is the 50s, right? It's, yeah,
No,
it's the 50s.
it's definitely the 50s. I
I
think
was
it's
afraid maybe it was 1960 or something, but I know
no,
that.
it's if anything, it's 59. It's definitely 50s.
Yeah, yeah. All right.
All right. Next up is here's one. Now this is by one of the best, most popular and probably the most important directors of these kind of movies in the 50s, but it's one of his lesser known movies and it's his last science fiction movie and it's The Space Children.
Oh, I don't even know this.
And it's Jack Arnold. So the same guy who did The Creature and Revenge of the Creature and It Came from Outer Space and The Incredible Shrinking Man and Tarantula and Monster on the Campus. I mean, that's quite an impressive lineup of movies. Anyway, this is 1959, 58 maybe, and it's his last science fiction movie. And this one, it's great. It's about
Never
this,
heard of it. I don't think.
huh? Never
I
heard
think
of
I've
it?
ever heard of it.
Okay,
Never heard of
this
this one.
this is one you might wanna put on your list, but it's about a mother and a father, a family with 2 young boys that move to this, they're gonna work for the military on some kind of project, and so they're gonna move to this small town, which is the entire town is made up of people who work in this plant, whatever they're doing there, and, uh, and so it's on the beach, and they're all living in these, like, it's almost like a trailer park on the beach, like a high-end trailer park. And so all the kids, they have when they first arrive there, they meet everybody, all the other families, and there's everybody has kids. It's almost like again, it's like a little suburban community on the beach, and all the kids start hanging out together. They have a barbecue, and the kids start running around playing, and they discover this cave not too far away, and inside this cave is this big glowing, pulsating giant brain creature and it gradually starts to manipulate the kids and make the kids do things. And of course, it wants the kids to eventually destroy the plant that all the parents work at. And and it's great. And it's got a lot about like child abuse because there's one of the parents is a drunk, abusive dad who beats his kid,
Oh,
and
lovely.
there's actually a scene where the alien force helps the kid and
Hmm.
actually kills the father.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
so it's got some interesting stuff going on in it, but yeah, the image that used to appear on the monster bubblegum cards was this glowing brain thing. Have you seen the brain from Planet Aros?
Oh yeah, sure.
This is like a giant version of that mixed with the blob, and it's a cool little movie. And
Yeah.
again, anything that Jack Arnold did, I mean, based on that list I just ran down, you can't go wrong with Jack Arnold movies. They're all great, every one of them. And this is
Okay.
I think the only one he made outside of, Universal International, so it's a little different, and it's the
Yeah.
Space Children.
Nice to hear. I mean, I didn't even know about that one.
Yeah, yeah, you'll
All
like it.
right. Last night, this was on Svengoolie by coincidence,
Hey, I know what it is.
and it's the terror from beyond space, and there's the monster. This is
All-time masterpiece.
it's a precursor to Alien. No doubt about it. The
Yeah,
Alien, got the idea. If you like the movie Alien, Sigourney Weaver.
it's the
Uh,
'50s version of Alien, definitely.
yeah, 50s version. They're on Mars and rocket ship, and it's one of the typical rocket ships, these slender rocket ships like that. I always wonder how these ships can have all the things inside based on how it looks from the outside. But it has different decks and levels and everything. Not as
An
sophisticated as in the
apartment
seven.
house.
Say again.
It's like an apartment house with the ability
Apartment
to fly
house.
through space.
And this monster from Mars gets aboard, and it's really not happy, and it's really pretty intense. This was one that was kind of scary to me as a kid. This was kind of intense, and it I don't know mutilates people and stuff, and throws them around, and can bend rifles and everything. It's a pretty scary force to be reckoned with, and then they got to try to keep it from level. All the the people that are on board, travelers have to make sure that they can seal off each one, but he keeps breaking through. And there are even scenes like in the air vents and things like that, kind of like we had later in Alien. It's traveling through there and hiding in there. And yeah, I mean that's really the gist of it. There's not much more you could say. It's a good old '50s monster movie with a pretty fierce monster. Um,
Kind of similar to Piedras Blancas monster.
yeah,
Looks like
yeah,
he's
yeah.
possum.
Right. We didn't talk that much about the monster in that one either, but yeah, it's cool. It's a good monster in Piedras Blancas also.
Yeah, he's like a much more brutal, nasty version of Creature from the Black Lagoon.
And the monster is played by Ray Crash Corrigan, right? And
Mhm.
yeah, it's highly
Um,
recommended '50s nonsense if you like monster movies.
yep. All right. Now I'm gonna come to this one because I've already passed my 10. I think I'm on like 14 now or something. So I I did pull this one from the top 10. This is the one that I mentioned earlier. Is not only my favorite monster movie, but probably my favorite movie of all time, of any movie. And the criteria I use for that, I mean, a lot of people have a lot of different you know, ideas of what your favorite movie is. And I think sometimes people use it to turn somebody on to something, or they'll say that's my favorite movie, or because it's important in some on some historical level, or they just hold it in this high esteem. But to me, the way to tell what your favorite movie is it's the movie you've seen the most times on purpose. Meaning, you if it's on TV, you watch it. If you stumble upon it on TV, you don't change the channel. You sit and you watch it. If it doesn't come on TV, eventually you're going to feel the need to throw on your copy and watch it. And in the case of this movie, I've seen this movie probably over 100 times since I'm a kid. I've owned it on VHS. I've owned it on Laserdisc. I've owned it on DVD, and now I have the Blu-ray. And if too much time goes by and I don't see this movie, I have to put it on. And that movie is.
Oh boy.
I think it's one of the most perfect movies ever made, and it is the original Thing from
I
another
was
world.
afraid it was going to be that.
1951, a flawless film, and I will explain why.
We're gonna have a real disagreement on this one.
That's
Let's,
fine. That's fine. We need to have a disagreement at some point. Um,
but
yeah, the
please.
first time I saw this movie was when I was homesick. I had a cold. My mother, I was alone. I was sleeping on the couch, and my mother was watching TV, and it was probably late on a Sunday night. And I think she was watching some crotchety old British movie. It was on Channel 9, and I think it might have been something like Brief Encounter or something, which is a great movie, but not when you're 8 years old. And it movie ended, and I was still sick, and I couldn't fall asleep. And then The Thing came on, and right from the very beginning, I'd never seen it before. That opening credits with the title burning, the
That's good.
the the way the movie was set, where it was set, is one of my favorite settings for any movie. Just like that, the little Antarctic base where they're all at, and it really captures the cold. And what I loved about it then, and I loved about it uh, every time I watch it, is it doesn't play the way the actors are and the way it's written. It doesn't play like all these other movies we're talking about. And again, there's the big debate whether or not Christian Nyby directed it or Howard Hawks. I'd say Howard Hawks, just because it has his stamp all over it. It plays exactly like a real movie, and the people act. I mean, a real story, like real life. The way and they act, 1951's version of that anyway. I mean, the way the actors are and the way the story unfolds, it could be a an army film from that time, a military film, could be a hard boiled crime drama. The way they talk, the way they act is exactly how people would act at that time. So it's none of the silly stuff that you see in these other movies, really exists. Maybe the monster itself, but that's a different story. But I mean, I would never want to. I can't think of anybody else I'd rather fight a monster with than this group of people, these guys.
Yeah, I know.
And the girl is great, and the relationship between Kenneth Topé and her is fantastic. And it's really like you said about Attack of the 50-Foot Woman. It's really lean. There's no fat. I mean, this thing again, just bet every second of the movie is nonstop interesting to me. Uh,
Hmm.
I have never gotten tired of this movie. To me, this is the high watermark for these kind of movies. Go ahead, Theo.
Whoa.
Your part.
Wow. I was afraid you were going to come up with this one. I tell you, sometimes on my music channel, talk about the most overrated, in my opinion. This is only album, and I say it's Beach Boys' Pet Sounds, and I
No,
get a
I'll
lot.
argue with you on. I can argue with you on that one too. But
Yeah, I get a lot of That's how I feel about the Thing from Another World. I find it terminally boring. Um, and when I say this is just my opinion, talky. I don't want to seem like I'm one of these. I hate to. I'm not picking on all younger people who can't take character development. They can't take talk and putting stuff on the table and character arcs and everything. Uh, I have a focus ability. I have an attention span. I just find it a lot of talk, and it just bores the hell out of me. And then when the monster arrives, I use the monster loosely. It's a bald guy. I just don't see. It just now I know that there's somebody like Richie that loves this movie. I know what it'd be like somebody from me dissing the Beatles. How I feel about the Beatles, you know. I just don't. I caught it later in life. I will say that I didn't catch it early. That might have helped. I wonder sometimes if Howard Hawks' name is involved, is why some people, not necessarily you, Rich, but other people think it has to have more of a uh, relevance than the, is prevalence is the word I'm looking for. Is it such a word? I'm stuttering here because I know how much he likes the movie, and I hate doing that when people don't like the movie. I just find it dull, really. Even with the added scene that they did recently when they put in right when they put in like even a S&M type of scene,
Well,
something
that's
like
not added in. That was actually taken
it
out.
was always in there. Well, I mean, take it out and then put
Oh yeah,
restored.
no. Well,
You
all
know,
right. Let me address your points there. I see what you're saying. Number one is, yeah, it's totally talky. It's probably more talky than any of them. But the difference for me is the dialogue is actually great, and the actors delivering the dialogue are great, as opposed to a lot of these movies that we see where the dialogue is nonsensical. And don't get me wrong, I love the more nonsensical, the more I like it. But this is just more serious within the context of the time that it was made. As far as the monster goes, obviously, if you know the book, I mean the story and the novella, who goes there? Yeah, the John Carpenter version is a much more
I
realistic
love that
place of
movie.
that, and that's a masterpiece in its own right. But so yeah, they opted for like a space Frankenstein slash vegetable in this one. But the fact that the concept of the monster might be a little silly is irrelevant, because that's what are we talking about here? But I don't I mean, I guess I can I mean, there's no way that any of these movies would mean what they mean to me if I didn't see them as a kid.
Mm,
So how many of them, I mean, as I discover new ones now, I do kind of just fall in love with them just because of the basic aesthetic of the 50s. And you got a 50s car, driving down a desert road, and I'm with
yeah,
that ominous music playing. I
I
know
know
I
what you
know
mean.
whatever happens, I'm all in for that. But this to me is like again, you say it's talky, but to me it's the smarter version of all the other ones, because this is not ridiculous.
Mm,
And again, it is talky, but what they're talking about is what these characters should be talking about in that situation. Do you know what I mean? They're not going with this. Not the scientists are using real science. Like what they're saying within the crazy concept here makes sense. The way the military guys act with the scientists, and it's not like the scientist becomes a villain. There's even a somewhat of a mutual respect, even though they're at odds, opinion wise.
mm.
But I think some of the reasons you don't like it, which is completely fair, are the reasons why I love it.
Well, just to save a little face, if I can, on that, one of the movies from the '70s that I love, one of my all-time favorite movies, is one that a lot of people think is extremely dull and talky, and that is The Andromeda Strain. I love that movie, and that movie is like it's just a lot of talk and experimentation. So just I only say that because a lot of people, not you, I've encountered have tend to do that. Oh, well, I guess you just don't like movies where there's any like intelligence in it, or if you don't like a Western movie that they pick, you say, I guess you don't like westerns then, huh? It's like no, I like I can
Well, look,
take
the
talk.
bottom line is it's how engaging you find what
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
talking about.
yeah.
If it's a talky movie, which the thing absolutely is, if you're not drawn into what they're talking about, you're going to be bored by it. To
And
me,
and I give it a
I'm
few
every
tries.
word in that movie.
I do love the John Carpenter movie, though. I gotta say, I think that I
Well,
mean, that's more like
that's a whole other animal or a whole other thing.
yeah, yeah. I
But
do love that,
I think that's a masterpiece and probably one of the best horror movies of all time. I would rate it up there.
and it's rare, where I'm very hesitant to say that I ever like a remake or a later version of a movie more than a 50s movie or 40s movie. You know, it's very rare, but I do like that one better.
The
But it's
Fly, I
okay.
think, Cronenberg's The Fly is much better than the original.
No, yeah,
And
yeah. Okay, I
it rarely happens. I know you prefer the modern version of, Invasion, or the
yeah,
70s
I
version of the
also
Body
like
Snatch.
the
To me,
1978
the 50s
Body
version
Snatch.
is another masterpiece. Uh,
Yeah, I like the
I
Donald
didn't put it
Sutherland
on here
version.
because it doesn't really have a monster in it, but
Ooh, excuse me. All right, folks. Well, it's like an hour 45, but I say we should still go because we still have picks. You should have picks left too, correct?
I don't really. I mean, I have a
Well, how
couple.
many did you have? Because that's not. Oh, oh, because some of them were doubles, maybe. Maybe that's
Yeah, and
why.
I think I'm probably at 15, or, or close to it. I don't know
Because
how.
I've got one, two, three, four, five left on my regular list, and then I've got five on the side.
I have one left that I no, I have
How did
two
that
left
happen?
that I haven't talked about, and they were like thrown in at the last minute when.
We've only agreed on two, so I'm wondering how that happened. All right, well, let me get through it. Hmm, some more. All right. I'm going to show this one again. It qualifies as a monster movie, even though the director did not want a monster in it, and that's a Curse of the Demon, but
That's
really known as Night
another
of the Demon was the
masterpiece.
real title. It's the longer version. There's two versions on this DVD, Curse and Night. Night is the recommended version because it's the longer version. It's a British film. Uh, I think it's exceptional. One of the best movies of its kind in the 50s.
I agree.
Um, Trying to get everybody here. We got Dana Andrews is a skeptic who he's an author and he doesn't believe in superstition and all that kind of stuff and supernatural. He's doing a meeting on it, a conference. He's coming to talk about it. He goes to England to do this conference, and he winds up dealing with a lot of cult kind of stuff and the demonic stuff. And you can see there is the monster. There he is. I think it's a cool monster too, by the way. In
Yeah,
there,
I think the director was wrong because I think the monster's pretty effective. I might not have put him in the beginning of the movie, but
yeah,
it would have
yeah.
been a good thing to build up to.
He wants to debunk a lot of this nonsense. He's one of these people just doesn't believe in, doesn't believe in superstition and everything. But he's coming up against a cult leader, Carswell, who has his number and everything like that. So he's got to like deal with him, and he's very good in this. I forget his
That's
name,
a great character, and that
the
performance is great.
Carswell person in here, Niall McGuinness.
Him and his mom.
Yeah, yeah, he's kind of a mama's boy still kind of thing. You know, it's just a really good. This is a pretty intelligent movie, despite they put a monster in there at times, and but really worth seeing because of that. You know, it has I don't know, it pass. What did they pass along a kind of parchment, a
Yeah,
paper?
yeah,
Whoever holds the parchment
is next in line to be
next to be
torn
rubbed out
apart
or
by the
whatever.
demon.
Yeah,
I guess showing it did make sense though in the beginning because you do have that sense of dread. Because if it was a silly looking demon, it would have ruined it. But it really is creepy looking, and the way
yeah,
he's
when that
over the
monster shows
plane.
itself, it is unsettling, and also the way it kind of floats towards you, it kind of
Yeah,
like float in the forest and stuff. That's a kind of a good effect of that.
a bit of the
What do you got,
dialogue,
Rich?
a bit of the dialogue from this movie was sampled by Kate Bush for Hounds of Love.
Was it?
Little bit of trivia there. It's in the trees. It's coming. That
Yeah.
dialogue is at the kicks off the song.
What else you got, Rich? You must have some more.
All right. Well, here I'm going to go the opposite of the Thing. Okay, this you can't get farther away from the Thing than this one, and this falls into the category of just how ridiculous some of these movies can be and how much fun they are. And this one is called From Hell It Came.
I knew it. I was hoping that would come up. You
And
talk about that monster and it conquered the world. How about this monster?
yeah, I mean, you can't get into these movies without having some of the most ridiculous concepts for creatures, and this one might win. There's a handful that, you could have the giant claw, or I'm trying to think of some of the other more ridiculous
Oh, the
ones.
giant claw's got to be one of the worst
Yeah, well, that's
monsters.
cuckoo for Cocoa Pops. But this one is
I never thought of that.
this one is a tree,
Tabanga.
and Topanga, the tree monster, and it's it's really good because it's really politically incorrect because you have all these natives who are clearly like white actors in makeup doing some of the worst native. I don't even know where they're supposed to be, but Topanga come, me fear Topanga. Just a real cheeseball kind of you know acting. Everything about this movie is absolutely terrible. I'm not gonna talk about this one. I wish I had an image of the monster to show you,
Yeah.
uh, because it literally is a tree that is stiff and has no movement whatsoever. It has a knife stuck in it. It has a face that I can't even describe
It
what that.
looks like maybe close to the Wizard of Oz tree monsters. They
Yeah,
have
yeah, but like the ones that don't really move. It looks like a Wizard of Oz tree monster if it was in like an elementary school play
I
of that.
probably got the DVD up there. I have a Warner Archives version of it.
Yeah, I have that too. But it has a cartoon of the monster, I think, right? On
No.
the cover, it's like art
Yeah.
from the poster.
Yeah.
But it's absolutely a ridiculous movie, and it's a lot of fun just for complete silliness. It has nothing going for it on any level of intellect at all. It's just ridiculous.
All righty. That's a fun one.
And again, if that movie comes on, I'm watching it, you know.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's a lot of fun. All right, I'm going to show you something here that's really stretching it. I wanted to throw a comedy in here. I do have a comedy that I like. Was on TV all the time. We mentioned the Bowery Boys, and there's there's one here from 1954. It's on here. You can't see really a picture from it or anything. It's called The Bowery Boys Meet the Monsters.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
it's again, it's I think it's 54 minutes or something. It's just
They
under
had a
an hour.
couple. Is that the one where they have that man-eating plant creature?
Yeah, they go to somebody's house and they want
Yeah,
on business. They want to like get a new. They want to get permission to use a baseball lot for their kids to play in that they know in the neighborhood, and it's owned in this mansion on Long Island, New York. They go to Long Island and the people are mad scientists, and one of these crazy women that are there is actually Ellen Corby, who was Grandma on the
sure,
Waltons.
the
She's
Waltons.
one of them. She has the plant that you mentioned, and that's her pet, the pet plant that eats people. It's a man-eating plant. The
Well,
monsters, as they call them, are really a guy in a gorilla suit. You got a gorilla. You've got a robot, a really weird-looking, clunky robot with a big square head. You know, is after them, and there's also a formula that one of the scientists invented that when you drink the formula, you turn into like a Mr. Hyde type character. And of course, Satch winds up at some point drinking the formula and turns into a monster and he attacks his boss,
I think at
Leo
one
Gorski.
point Flip sends Whitey and Satch for help, and he goes, "No, he's sending Satch," and he goes, "No, wait, take Whitey. There's safety in numbskulls."
It's
Wait, but let me show you
malapropism.
something. I got to show you something, John.
Okay,
Since
please
we're
do.
talking about monsters and the Bowery Boys, let me see if I could get this over here. I call this. Hold on, wait.
Looks like Uncle Gilbert.
It's a slip lagoony. I call it.
Oh, slip.
Creature from the Black Lagoon with a slip. A
Don't
slip
forget.
Mahoney hat.
When you watch an episode of The Munsters, has Uncle Gilbert in there, and he's wearing a hat like that. Creature from the
Yeah.
Black Lagoon is Uncle Gil.
You know what else I wanted to show? I didn't show before when we were talking about the Blob. Uh, Back in the 80s, when the Criterion was only laser discs, that's all they
Hmm.
put out. That's all it existed. That's how they started. And they would put out. Actually put out the Blob way back then. And when they would put out their laser discs, they always had interesting choices for covers because they would
Hmm.
just take a still from the movie, and
Hmm.
sometimes it was just boring or not interesting. Sometimes they were really would come up with something interesting. And I love their cover for the Blob. If you could hold it. Wait, nope, nope, nope.
Let me blow it up. Hold on a minute.
Yeah, it's just a really cool image of
Yeah,
the
yeah, that thing is
Blob
a
on the
blob.
bottom and the nurse when she's just about to throw the acid on it. And
Yeah,
just the way the whole thing is centered there. I really
I
thought that
got a
was cool.
confession to make. I like the so-called sequel of Beware the Blob. Believe it or not, also
You
known as
mean
Son of Blob.
you mean a chip off the old Blob?
I actually like it. It's not a
That was the
'50s movie,
working
folks.
title. You know that, right? The chip off the old Blob.
I didn't know. I know Son of Blob, Beware the Blob, Chip off
Yeah,
the
I
old.
love that movie. Yeah, that's great. That's a
It's a
great
crazy
70s.
movie. It's from '72, I think. It's a
Yeah.
'70s movie, and it's directed by Larry Hagman for My Dream of Jeannie, and
You know what
J.R.
they
Ewing.
called that? They called it the film J.R. shot.
Yeah, yeah. That's something we could talk about that
Play
some
on
other
the whole
time.
like Who Shot JR.
Where are we at? But well, actually, you have a turn. You have anything there? Because I
Uh,
have a few. I'll try to
yeah, you
wrap
do
it up
one
soon.
because I'm running low.
Oh, okay. Well, you have nothing. All right. I don't know how I got all these left, but anyway, yeah, I'm gonna show a couple more. This is a movie called The Vampire from 1957. It's about a doctor that takes bat pills or something. It's pills for vampire bats, and he
I thought they were
accidentally
back
takes
pills.
these bat pills, and he turns into that's what he looks like. He's kind of like a
Yeah.
blood sucking vampire monster. That's one. That's I recommend that. Yeah. What else do I got here? I didn't show my number one yet, but I'm going to try to. There's a lots of movies. We can do another part. We'll get to the
Invasion
end
of
of
the Saucer Men, I would mention that one. That's great.
Invasion of the Saucer Men. If you think of any
Sequence.
runner ups that you really like, of course, Curse of the Faceless Man.
Yeah.
This is about a slave from the days of Pompeii
He's a
who
good
what
that's a good monster that they just don't use enough in the
right.
movie.
It's a good
He's a
idea,
good
but the
monster, yeah.
movie could have been better. He
Yeah.
wound up getting covered with lava when Mount Vesuvius overran, and he comes back, in modern times, and he's still in stone, and kind of does not as much as you like him to do. All right, let me just go now to my film that I have for number one. This out of all the films I showed, this is my favorite film, monster film of the '50s, and it's not the best. See, at least Richie has a film that is revered as a good film. This is not, but it's my favorite by far, and it is Frankenstein's daughter. This
Wow.
is this is my favorite '50s film,
Wow.
and let me tell you what the deal is with this.
That's surprising.
I don't know how to even begin. I seem to remember around 1970. I want to say I was about I don't know maybe 8 years. It could have been 72. I'll say I was like 10, something like that. I had a block party. I lived in Queens, New York. We used to have block parties in the street. Everybody's outside. The music's playing. The truck is here with all the rides for the kids. It's nighttime. All you could hear is partying in the street. And I'm inside watching Chiller Theater. I don't care. I mean, I want to watch Chiller Theater. What was on that night? Frankenstein's daughter. And we've talked again earlier about how there's a lot of these that are suburbia and how it takes place in your own neighborhood. That's what really got me right away. And you got to remember too, this movie came out in 1958, and we think of these as old movies, but if I saw it in '70, say, it's only 12 years old. The movie.
Mhm.
You don't think of it like that. Or '72, not much older. It's pretty new considering. It's like watching a movie today from 2010 or something. To
Right.
2022, and there's stuff in there like you see like limbs, you see like some bloody limbs at times, a hand, I think you see parts, body parts. You see there's an end when Frankenstein's character, Oliver Frankenstein, gets acid in the face and his face is like it just melts off. And all this was going on again in a cellar. Looked like my basement of the house I'm in, watching this in. It looks like a Queens, New York house. You see, typical streets with the cars parked and the lawns and everything. And it could be right outside where the block party's going on. Speaking of the block party, there's a really corny but fun scene when they have a barbecue, backyard barbecue in the movie. And there's a group called Page Kavanaugh and his trio. And they play these dorky songs like Daddy Bird and Special Date. And all this going on with people having hot dogs and partying and music was going on outside the door, just feet away from me, on this summer night. At the same time, it could have been happening right now. So it really caught me, all this. Plus, you've got Oliver Frank, played by Donald Murphy, who's a sleazeball to the nth degree. He's the most detestable, hateful, freaking doctor you just like to punch in the face. He is really a fiend in this movie. And you don't have one monster, you have two monsters in this movie.
That's
And
right.
one of them is Sandra Knight. Uh, this guy, Oliver Frank, he makes a fruit punch, he spikes with some. some formula in there to see if he can preserve the cells of the monster he's thinking about making, and he uses the girl as a guinea pig. He just gives this girl a fruit punch.
That's just wrong.
you know, I mean, especially today. And it disfigures her,
Even then,
and she winds up like this is not a very good picture of it, but she winds up like running around uh, the streets. There's better pictures than that. That's not her. That's not her in the
she
final
actually
stage.
looks good in that picture compared to
Yeah,
how
she
she
gets
looks.
worse. And then, meanwhile, he's building another monster that looks more like a traditional Frankenstein monster.
If
It's got the square.
Frankenstein was like a brutalized boxer, though,
He has a brutalized boxer
he's
with.
completely like
He looks more. Well, he looks like that square head, but he's not. He doesn't have that body though. But he's got
no.
that face, the square head, the bolts. But it's really a female monster because
He
he's
looks a
using the
little like
head.
Maxie Rosenblum or something.
Yeah, who is that guy? Is that his name? The guy he's been in. He was in Some Like It Hot. Harry Wilson is the monster.
Oh, yeah. Well, you're thinking, yeah, I know who you're talking about. Maxie Rosenblum was like a fighter, but he has that kind of like cauliflower face.
Yeah, but the beautiful thing is the face looks so like obviously it's a male. Obviously, you see him in the beginning of Some Like It Hot. This guy, he's in there, and he
Is
plays
that
the
the same?
monster.
Is that actually the same actor?
Yeah.
Oh, it
Oh
is.
yeah.
Oh,
And the commentary is great. You got to hear the audio commentary on this. But the thing is, it's really a woman because the head he supposedly used is from a beautiful, gorgeous blonde played by Sally Todd, who is the sexiest, most beautiful thing in this movie. And she is the victim who runs afoul of Oliver Frank, aka Frankenstein. Oliver Frank, short for Frankenstein. you know. And anyway, when they made the movie, the makeup man didn't realize the monster was supposed to be female, so they have it's all botched up. So they have this guy, and he decided to put lipstick on him at the last minute. So you got this guy with the square head
yeah.
and the bolt and some lipstick on his mouth. So there's instant female monster, you know, and just a lot of it's everything I love about these movies. It's fun. It's got not one but two monsters. It's got cheesy music in it. It's got an evil doctor. It hits all
Got it
the
all. It's got
bullseyes.
John Ashley singing.
John Ashley's in it as well. Yeah, and he's pretty deadpan in this movie.
Yeah.
But
My
yeah,
story with that is I got the Blu-ray and my machine won't play it. So of course I had to buy a new
yeah. You
player.
never fixed that. Never. Yeah, it just came out this
Yeah.
Blu-ray.
That's
You got to try to get lucky with it. Get another one or
I'm
something
due. Yeah, I'm
because
due for a viewing. No, I bought a new machine. I just haven't set it up yet, but I'm due for a viewing.
yeah,
I haven't seen that in a long time, and I do love it as
I
well.
can't say enough about it. It just has, and I saw it on the right time, under the right conditions.
Sure.
Kind of like paralleling the block party festivities that were going on. It was like perfect.
Well,
So that's it.
yeah, you
I
have your
think.
personal reasons, but I think that's also one of those movies that you just can't help but love it when it comes on.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It's nothing but
Never
fun
gonna
beginning to
never
end.
gonna call it a good movie in the sense of
Doesn't have to be.
cinematically.
If it's
But
hey, I'd rather watch that than a lot of movies that people think are, I'd rather watch that than Forrest Gump.
sure. All right. Well, I think
I
we're
don't
at
know
the end
why
of
I
the
have to
line.
use Forrest Gump and soil this entire broadcast.
Yeah, that's
Uttering
what
that name.
just what you need at
Yeah.
the end. Well, anyway, that's it for us, folks. We're just over 2 hours. So thank you so much, Richie, for joining me here.
Thanks, Joe. Let's
And it's
do it
been a
again.
blast as usual when we do these kinds of things. We do them in person when we get together, but we never did it here. This is good
Yeah.
to have
These are our
a show.
conversations at the record store all the time.
Yeah. Let us know what you think, folks. We'll do more, I'm sure, in the future. So
Thanks, Joe. Thanks,
take
everybody.
take care, Rich. Take care, everybody.
Take care.